Hello everyone, how are you? Welcome to a new video. Before we begin today's chapter, I invite you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, it would help me a lot if you left a comment with your opinion, as that motivates me to keep bringing you more stories. Now then, get comfortable and I'll leave you with the fanfic.
Uchiha Itachi and Shunshin no Shursui were walking through the village when they heard Screaming Kid. Probably another mob of drunk civilians tried to finish Yondame's job in their opinion. They're too stupid to understand difference between kunai and scroll. I won't allow them to do that, thought Itachi. They quickly ran towards place from where screams were coming, and they saw a large crowd torturing small child with mop of blonde, spiky hairs. Shursui, I will deal with this mob, while you catch Naruto and run with him onto the nearest roof. Patch him as much as possible, ordered Itachi, and Shursui only nodded. They were able to communicate without any words spoken due to time they spent together, both on the battlefield and off it. Normal onyx black eyes of Itachi morphed into red and black Sharingan with 3 tomo. He charged towards that mob. Members of it that were in the back rows were the first ones to get into his way. Most of them didn't even have a chance to scream in the alarm as his punches and kicks hit them, knocking them out. Itachi was methodically moving closer to Naruto while knocking out shinobi and civilians that got in his way. They didn't stand a chance against one of ANBU, as only some of the weaker shinobi were joining such mobs. Shursui meanwhile used distraction caused by Itachi to catch Naruto and Shunshined with him to the nearest roof so that he could take a look at him. Naruto's body was battered and bruised, but the strangest thing was the color of his eyes. They were red with 3 tomo, and that was Sharingan, one of the 3 great dojutsu and one that was only appearing in the eyes of Uchiha clan, which meant that Naruto was somehow connected with Uchiha clan, although how he was connected wasn't known to Shursui, who ran through a couple of hand seals and his hand glowed green. He moved it above and along the body of Naruto, trying to see how severe was the damage to internal organs, as they were the biggest problem. Good thing was that he was in so much pain that he was unable to move, as it made checking how bad it looked way easier. He grimaced when his scans showed multiple organs damaged. He had Orion in training, but he couldn't do much with such extent of damage. He could only patch the worst wounds and then get him to the hospital or get one of ANBU combat medics that had more chakra than him. But for that, he was going to wait for Itachi. He knocked Naruto out with gentle chop to the back of his neck. At least he wouldn't remember and feel most of that pain, and it would make moving him easier. Going back to Itachi, once every single member of that mob was on the ground and unconscious, he tied them in such way that they couldn't escape and confiscated all of their weapons that they carried for his safety's sake, and so that they couldn't escape. Once they were put in nice and even rows, with their hands tied behind their backs, he looked up and saw Shursui standing on one of the roofs and holding unmoving form of Naruto. How bad it is? Itachi asked when he appeared in front of those two. Rarely seen anger visible in his eyes, which normally were matte black and didn't show a thing. He remembered Yondaime Hokage and wanted to murder everybody that attacked his son. I have both good and bad news, replied Shursui. From which one should I start? Bad, only replied Itachi. It's a miracle he is alive, said Shursui. I rarely saw a body that was so battered and was still alive, multiple organs damaged. I lost count of broken bones, not to mention dozens of smaller and bigger wounds. And good news? Asked Itachi, hoping that it would be something better. For the first time in ages on his face appeared signs of emotions. He always kept them under tight control, unless when with friends or family. In the open they were always masked, that was impossible to read and unsettling for ones that were dealing with him. He has fully matured Sharingan, said Shursui. I don't know how he got this, but his Sharingan will be quite an interesting one. He might have eternal Manjikyu from the beginning, assuming he will unlock it. Take him to the hospital, use part reserved for ANBU usage, said Itachi. I don't trust normal doctors not to kill him, and if he will be placed in normal part of it, in few hours everybody will be talking about it and wanting to finish what this mob didn't do. And what are you going to do? Asked Shursui, picking up unmoving frame of Naruto. He wasn't showing his emotions, but he was worrying about Naruto, in fact a lot. He hoped that Naruto would be able to come out of this. He knew that Itachi was also worrying about Naruto. After years spent together as they were cousins and hours they spent training, he was able to read subtle changes in Itachi mask, and he knew when Itachi was worrying. Talk with Hokage-sama and do something about that lot, replied Itachi and indicated crowd tied on the ground. Some of them were waking up and looked around in shock. They were tied and couldn't move, which meant they were in troubles. Question only was in how big troubles they were going to be. Itachi shunshined from that roof to the Hokage tower and walked into the office of Hokage, who only raised his head from the paperwork and looked who was coming. When he saw Itachi with lips being pulled into a thin line and narrowed eyes, he knew that the news weren't good. They probably were somewhere between very bad and extremely bad. Question only was how bad they were. Hokage-sama. Mob attacked Uzumaki Naruto, said Itachi, kneeling on one knee in front of his ruler and commander. I and Shursui stopped them. He took Naruto to the hospital while I went here. All people that attacked him are tied and awaiting your judgment. How bad it was this time? Asked Hokage, worry appearing in his voice. Last few attacks on Naruto were rather brutal and they could change into outright riots, not to mention that they could kill Naruto. Bad, only replied Itachi. Shursui said that it was a miracle that he was alive. There is also a second thing, Naruto has fully matured Sharingan. Show me where it happened, said Hokage and snapped his fingers, causing 4 Anbu to appear in front of him. You will accompany us there. As you wish, only replied Itachi, walked to the window and jumped out of it, followed by Hokage and his escort. They were jumping from the roof to roof, leaping over the streets where people looked in wonder what was the reason for such a hurry of their leader. They landed in front of that street where crowd attacked Naruto and it was already full of curious people, which immediately got out of it when they saw Hokage walking there. If he was there, it was serious thing and Anbu that were with him confirmed their suspicions. Those are the ones responsible for what happened? Asked Hokage, looking at tied people, who were struggling to get away from Hokage as they knew that he was furious. At least that could be said guessing by the cracks in the ground that were appearing all around him. It meant that he had troubles with keeping his chakra under control and that happened when someone was angry or felt another extreme emotion. Yes, replied Itachi. Tora, said Hokage looking at tiger-masked Anbu, who was also leader of detachment protecting the Hokage. Get them to TNI and once they get everything useful out of them, execute them. Anbu bowed to their leader, grabbed tied people and disappeared with them. Some of those prisoners tried to struggle against iron grip of Anbu, but it was pointless, they were too strong. Isn't that a bit too extreme? Asked Itachi. It isn't, calmly replied Hokage. They deserve every bit of what they're going to receive. Now you said that Naruto was in hospital? In which part of it? Anbu ward, said Itachi. I know I shouldn't do that, but I do not trust doctors not to kill him. It was the best decision, said Hokage. We better check on him. After those words, Hokage jumped onto the roof and from there shunshined to the hospital. He walked through the front doors, Itachi half a step behind him. Sharingan spinning madly in his eyes, only sign of his anger. People that were there hurried out of the way of Hokage, as they saw that he was angry. And nobody was going to test him. After all, he was called Kami no Shinobi and was an extremely deadly fighter. Itachi walking half a step behind him made them get out of the way even faster. However, Hokage didn't even notice them as he walked past everywhere and towards restricted area, where on guard stood 2 Anbu who saluted to him and moved aside, letting them pass into area that was reserved for treatment of Anbu and important shinobi that potential could be a target of assassination. When they entered it, they saw a flurry of activity and medics coming and going. Most of them seemed nor to notice Hokage as he was there after more bloodied missions when he wanted to see how battered were Anbu which got home. Some of those medics stopped and walked towards Hokage when they saw who was walking with him. How bad it is? Asked Hokage. Bad, surgeons are working on him. But it will take them at least few more hours to finish patching him up, said one of them and Hokage only nodded. May I know who caused those wounds? Usual mob, said Hokage, with grim determination visible on his face. But this time they won't get a chance to do that again. Morini Ibiki thought that he would have a boring evening as nothing really was happening and was forced to do the bane of his existence. That is paperwork. Nobody liked to do that, yet someone needed to do that, and in this case it was him as he was a commander of TNI. However, his thoughts about the evening shattered when in front of him appeared Anbu with a lot of tied people. He looked up and saw that they were a little battered, tightly tied, and those that carried them didn't care about how they were treated. which means that they angered someone and he needed to get data out of them. Tora, what did they do? He asked, trying to hide his amusement and relief that he was able to do something else than that blasted paperwork. Almost killed Uzumaki Naruto, said Tora. Hokage-sama has very clear orders for you. Get everything useful out of them and execute them. Wonderful, said Ibiki with a grin that would made a shark envious. Tori. Yes? Asked Anbu wearing Tori mask that appeared in front of Ibiki. Get me every single interrogator here, said Ibiki, and dump this lot into holding cells. While Anbu went to dumping those people into the cells that would be their home for some time, Ibiki was thinking what questions he should ask and how. He was good at getting answers out of people, and he knew that they knew that he wasn't going to play nicely. Basically, Hokage wanted results and wasn't questioning how he got them, which was fine with Ibiki. He was going to pick them apart piece by piece and get everything useful out of those pieces. It would be a really interesting day of work, at least for him and his interrogators, which would have quite a lot of fun. Mitarashi Anko walked into T&I and saw an amount of people that was rarely seen there, unless some important shinobi got caught and they needed to get everything out of his mind. But this time there was none high-value target caught, only just a bunch of civilians and ninja. She grinned madly at the idea of so many people to check her skills on. It would be an interesting thing to do. Your orders are simple, said Ibiki, getting everybody's attention. Get every single piece of data out of them. Methods doesn't matter. Only results matter. They are going to be executed once you are done with them, so you are free to use whatever you want to. Anko only smiled at those words. It would be a perfect day for her, and she wasn't asked to care about state of subject she was going to work on. He could be half dead by the end of her interrogation, and she rarely had such opportunity to play with them. Usually she was asked to do that by the rules. She walked down the corridor and to the holding cells where were held this that were caught. She passed by them, watching who was inside and looking for a person that would be interesting to work with. Her gaze swept over multiple people, men, women, and even some academy students. She was looking for over 10 minutes, until her eyes landed on a man that looked to be a rather rich merchant and probably council member. Doors to his cell opened and Kenji raised his head. He saw Mitarashi Anko entering it. When he saw her, his blood run cold. She was known as Snake Mistress or Snake Bitch of Konoha, and she was one of the best interrogators working for T&I. She was known for her ability to get answers out of almost everybody she was asked to interrogate. Anko smiled predatory when she saw that her target was shitting himself when he saw her. It made her work so much easier. He probably didn't know that today he wouldn't be leaving this building alive, and he would be buried in unnamed grave as all traitors were buried. She entered his cell and yanked him up, forcing him to walk in front of her. He struggled against her grip, but she held strong and wasn't letting him go. They walked through the halls of the building and they entered large room with simple metal table in the middle of it and 2 chairs set around it. Anko shoved her target into one, so far she would be playing nicely. Once he was tied to one, she sat in one opposing him and allowed Snake that was hiding in her sleeve to appear on the table. It was highly venomous breed of king cobra and rather large one as well. It slithered out of her sleeve and coiled on the table. Taking most of the space there, it was over 5 meters long and rather dangerous. Kenji paled when he saw the snake coil comfortably on the table in front of him and look at him. Anko only smiled when she saw the reaction of Kenji. Her main summon was causing such reactions on ones she was interrogating. This little snake will tell me when you are going to lie, so I suggest that you won't do that, unless you want to get it uncomfortable and dangerous for you, said Anko with rather nasty smile on her lips. She looked rather terrifying with that snake coiled in front of her on the table and looking at that councilman. I won't answer any of your questions, said defiantly Kenji, and she only laughed, while her cobra only hissed at him, showing her fangs covered in venom. Anko tilted her head to the right, looking at Kenji with curiosity. He was an interesting case, usually they were more willing to talk. She sighed and decided to do it quickly and rather painfully for him. She looked at her cobra, who nodded and coiled her body, raising her head and preparing to strike. It leaped towards Kenji, her mouth open and fangs extended. She buried them in his shoulder and retreated. Kenji should be thankful that this bit was so short, as it entered only enough of poison to increase all sensations by dozens, if not hundreds of times, and to cause immense pain to his whole body. It would take few minutes to take full effect, but it already started spreading. The fact that he was uneasy and his heart was beating quickly only helped with that, not to mention place where he was bitten. Shoulder, from which way to the heart and main part of the bloodstream was extremely short. After that, Anko extended her hand and grabbed Kenji with his chair. She freed him from it, but she immediately pinned him against the wall with a couple of well-placed kunai that passed through his clothes. She walked towards him and looked at him curiously. "Who are you?" she asked, starting with the easiest question. "I won't speak with you," shouted Kenji, knowing well that he needed to bid his time. Civilian council would raise hell about what just happened, so he should be able to get out of the room in few hours. However, he didn't know that his fate was already sealed and rest of the civilian council wouldn't do much, only would annoy Hokage-sama. When Anko heard that answer, she smiled like a piranha, showing her beautiful teeth in the process, but her smile wasn't pleasant. It promised a lot of pain and suffering for someone who got onto her bad side. After that, she slapped him across the face, accidentally breaking his nose and causing small fountain of blood to erupt from it. "I will ask once again," she sweetly said. "Who are you?" "Kenji." He only replied, and Anko glanced at her snake, which stood where she was nodding approvingly. "You speak truth, good boy," she said, and thought how to phrase the next question. "Can you tell me what were you doing today around noon?" "I was doing some shopping," said Kenji, and another slap was heard all over the room, followed by scream of pain. Kenji spit some blood out of his mouth and couple of teeth as well. Anko wasn't known for being gentle, and she wasn't going to be kind during interrogation. "I wonder to which parts of you we will get before you will start speaking truth," said Anko, and looked at him. Again, "What were you doing today around noon?" "I was walking through the village," said Kenji, causing Anko to laugh at those words. "I will tell you this only once," said Anko. "I will get those answers out of you one way or another, so you will only slow me down, and I'm in no mood to be playing games with you. So I suggest you just cooperate. So once again, where were you at noon?" "I was with the mob that was hunting that demon child," said Kenji, and Anko smiled at him. "Good boy," she said, smiling sweetly, and continued her questioning of him. They weren't hard to break if one knew how to do that, and fear was a powerful motivation. While Anko was having her fun with few poor souls, Hokage was waiting in the hospital for first reports after all those surgeries, most of which only helped natural healing abilities of Naruto to work, such as removing objects embedded in flesh and organs or pulling wounds together so they would heal faster, but excluding that, cleaning his wounds and putting pieces of bones in their proper places, they didn't need to do a lot of work on him. "Hokage-sama," said Eiji, getting aged leader attention. "He will heal all of those injuries as if nothing happened. He is in deep coma and he will be in it for next day or two so that his body can heal those injuries, but other than that he is okay. Only chakra coils in his eyes are abnormally large, like he had some sort of dojutsu. That's because he has Sharingan," said Itachi. He probably didn't realize he had it, and he had it constantly active. Also, people didn't want to see it, so nobody told him that he had it. "But how can he possibly have it?" asked Eiji. "None of his parents had it." "One of them had it," replied Itachi, "but that's not my story to tell." After that, Itachi looked at Hokage. "May I speak with my father about it?" "Of course, Itachi-kun," said Hokage. Itachi nodded and walked out of the wing and shunshined towards Uchiha Mansion. When he appeared in front of it, mask he was wearing dropped from his face, allowing all of his worries and fears to appear on it. He walked towards study of his father and entered it, not bothering to knock, and he accidentally interrupted meeting between his father and clan elders. Every occupant of the room looked up from the papers over which they were focused and looked to see who interrupted them. They saw that one that interrupted them was Uchiha Itachi, eldest son of Uchiha Fugaku and his heir. "To-san," said Itachi politely, immediately putting back mask on his face. "I need to speak with you privately about something that happened in the village today, as it will have immense effects on our clan." "I trust elders of our clan," said his father, "so whatever you wanted to tell me in private, you may tell me with them in attendance." "As you wish," said Itachi, and sat on the floor in front of the clan council. "Uzumaki Naruto has Sharingan, fully evolved one as well." Fugaku didn't move for a moment, and his face was lacking any expression as he was only waiting for that day to happen. he would be able to get around civilian council and their stupid ideas to block adoption of him by any of ninja clans. Apparently, not only he realized consequences of those revelations, and few councilmen were wide-eyed and a little pale. I was wondering when it was going to happen, said Fugaku. I think we can disperse with usual song and dance, and I will be blunt with you. As all of you know, my father, Uchiha Barui, had 2 wives. First one was Senju Naomi, and she was mother of Namikaze Minato, who was my half-brother, and as such there was a secret part of Minato will. One known only to me, him, his wife, and I believe Jiraiya, who was a second witness of signing it. He asked me in it to adopt Naruto into Uchiha clan in the event that he unlocks his Sharingan. Which means that council will throw a fit, said Kagami, as they try to wrestle as much control and power from Shinobi and Hokage hands, and adoption of Naruto will cause that we will rise in power. Also for the sake of doing anything against Naruto. They can complain as much as they can or want to, but they won't stop me, said Fugaku. If they will be reminded why some clans are feared for their skills on the battlefield. Of course, nodded Eiji, we agree with you, but it is our duty as a council to show you disadvantages of your decisions and what effects they can have on our clan and village in which we are living. Thank you, said Fugaku, and they nodded. I need to speak with the Hokage-sama. You won't mind if we finish the meeting at the later date? No, of course not, said almost everybody, and they hurried out of the room. Fugaku meanwhile walked out of the room and towards living room, where he found Mikoto, who noticed that something happened. Honey, what happened? She softly asked. She easily saw through that mask Fugaku was wearing and wondered what was the reason for his behavior. Naruto has finally awakened his Sharingan, quietly replied Fugaku. I was going to visit him in the hospital and speak with Hokage-sama about it. Of course, she said and moved to his side. I will go with you. They quickly left the room and their manor, walking through the streets of the village towards the hospital, walking quickly but not showing in their posture that they were in hurry. They were wearing classic mask of Uchiha clan, that is sneer showing their arrogance and that they looked down on almost everybody. When they entered the hospital, people looked at them as they saw Itachi leaving it without any words and were wondering where he went. They headed without any words towards restricted part of the hospital, and 2 guards standing on the outside of it moved away from it, letting them pass. Their entrance caught the attention of almost everybody, especially the fact that they walked directly towards Hokage, who was standing by the window, looking outside of it and seemed to be deep in thoughts. Hokage-sama, politely said Fugaku, getting his attention. Fugaku-san, Mikoto-chan, replied Hiruzen. I guess that Itachi-kun told you about what we had found? Yes, he did, replied Fugaku. We both know what that means. Secret part of Minato will is now active, and as such he is going to be adopted into Uchiha clan. Yes, said Hokage, rubbing his temples, worries and troubles visible on his face. It was going to be a political nightmare, as civilian council was going to scream about this decision. May we see him? Asked Mikoto. Of course, replied Eiji, who was the one that patched him up. He will be covered in bandages, but he will recover fully. They walked into a small room and saw Naruto laying there on the bed that was in the middle of it. He was covered in multiple bandages and looked pale, also signs of malnutrition were visible. Mikoto hissed when she saw them. She was able to understand a lot of things, but not a malnutrition. He looks bad, she quietly said, and did couple of diagnostic jutsu on her own. It seems that Fox is more of the blessing than a curse. He is fixing as much damage as it is possible, and that explains how he survived those things. We will make sure that he will grow up in safe and happy atmosphere, assured her Fugaku, knowing well that they were playing a risky game with that adoption. A lot was riding on it. Tensions inside of the village were going to rise, and they were going to need to release them in somewhat controllable manner, without causing too much collateral damage to everything. Yes, we will, agreed Mikoto and looked at Eiji. Let us know the moment he wakes up. As you wish, said Medic, and she nodded. Now we need to plan how to deal with this situation, she said, looking at Fugaku. Yes, agreed with them. Hokage adoption forms will be filled out and signed by today evening. Thank you, Hokage-sama, said Fugaku, nodding his head lightly. Support from Hokage made pushing this decision way easier, especially if clans were going to stand united as they usually did. especially when civilian council was trying to pass another stupid decision. After that they simply stood there, watching unmoving form of Naruto in complete silence, excluding sounds emitted by heart monitor and his breathing. Council room was abuzz with activity and talks. Everybody already heard about what happened today and civilian council was displeased with what happened. Also several of them were missing. While Shinobi wondered why it took so long for Hokage to finally decide to punish them as they should be punished. Most of them remembered how Namake's Minato was ruling and they wished those times could came back. He wasn't so soft and justice was swift and brutal. With this one it wasn't so swift or brutal as it should be and civilians had way too much power. All talks and chatter stopped when doors to the chamber flew open and Hokage walked in, followed by Uchiha Fugaku, Mikoto and Itachi. Some looked at them in wonder, while some only in fear. They knew that whatever had happened had some sort of influence on Uchiha clan. And guessing by the way in which they entered it had a rather good influence on it, but with Uchiha nobody was sure, as they were masters of hiding their emotions under the mask. They walked to their seats and only sign of Uchiha being angry were slowly spinning Sharingan. At least those were only signs visible for the civilian council. Shinobi sighed immediately read more subtle signs, tensed bodies, small ticks of corners of their mouths, slightly narrowed eyes and so on. But Shinobi were masters of reading other people. So for them those subtle signs weren't so subtle, causing some of them to gulp and hope that they weren't on the receiving end of incoming fury. 3 village elders and Hokage advisors sat on the opposite side of the table and looked at Hokage curiously. They knew something happened, but didn't know what. They only managed to learn that it was something bad and that it was extremely delicate matter. Their suspicions were raised even higher when they saw who was accompanying Hokage to the chamber. It only meant they were in private meeting and it was rather important. "Where are Kenji, Akihiro and Ko?" asked one of civilians' counselors. "Where they should be," replied Hokage inside of TNI, and if I'm right they're meeting interrogators, due to what happened earlier today. Assault on the newest member of Uchiha clan. "Fugaku-san, if you could do the honors," said Hokage and gave Fugaku sealed scroll on which was visible the seal of Yondaime Hokage and one of Uchiha clan near it. "With pleasure," only replied Fugaku. He took scroll handed to him. He broke the seal and handed it back to Hokage. "Ah yes," said Hokage, his eyes running over the things written inside of the scroll, last will and testament of Namake's Minato. "To Hitaki Kakashi, 10 million ryo and my collection of books, along with scrolls on Sharingan from Namake's library. Use them well and do not fall into self-pity. To Uchiha Fugaku, who is my half-brother, my sabers and scrolls on the Rasengan and Hiration for safekeeping until my son is ready to get them. To Jiraiya, all my notes and research about space and time ninjutsu and other research. Maybe you will be able to finish those things. Everything else I leave to my son Namake's Naruto. In case that he unlocks Sharingan before he is 12, I ask Fugaku to adopt him into Uchiha clan, treat him as his own son and to fully train him in Uchiha way of war. Signed, Namake's Minato. Uchiha Fugaku as a witness. Jiraiya as a witness. Namake's ne Uzumaki Kushina as a witness. When Hokage read content of the scroll aloud, level of noise rised in the room to level that was almost impossible to imagine. Everybody was shouting at everybody and it looked like it wasn't going to stop anytime soon. He let them shout for few more minutes, before he slammed his hand onto the surface of the table, silencing them immediately, but not for a long time. It seemed they were ready to draw the ire of person they shouldn't draw. "It's fake," yelled Koga. "Demon child can't be his son." "Naruto has a name," retorted Fugaku, glaring across the table. "And unless you're brain dead, you will be able to tell that Naruto is his son." "Execute him," yelled someone else and got thrown in the wall by annoyed Shikaku, who used his shadow to do so. "Can all of you just shut up your mouths for a moment?" asked Shikaku, and when they nodded, some of them reluctantly, he looked once again over their faces. "This scroll is legit and we all know that. So can we get over it?" "Thank you, Shikaku-san," said Hokage as said, "This scroll is legit and we won't contest that fact. Now for all your knowledge, Naruto has active Sharingan and as such last part of the will is active. It will be carried out and you will do exactly nothing to stop it. Unless you want to join your colleagues inside of TNI, which they won't leave alive." "You won't dare," screamed shocked Koharu. Yes, I will dare, replied Hokage and looked over their faces. Everything stays in this chamber and it will be carried out, council dismissed. Civilians got out of the chamber as quickly as they could. They were shocked by the events of today and it looked like it was getting worse for them. And could only get worse. While Shinobi side of the council walked out slowly talking about those events and enjoying their time, it looked like future of Konoha looked bright, and it seemed that problem of son of Namikaze Minato was finally solved. On the next day after that fateful council meeting, moods in Konoha were rather dark and some people were arrested thanks to what those captured previously told ones that were interrogating them. But excluding that life was good and somewhat peaceful, Shinobi were doing missions, training and relaxing while civilians were focused on their lives. Naruto slowly opened his eyes and looked around. He saw that he was in room all painted white, which meant that another mob attacked him and he still didn't know for what he was attacked. He remembered being saved by someone, but he didn't know by who. He also noticed his body covered in bandages and the fact that nothing was aching him and working as it should be. When his sight fully focused, he noticed Hokage standing in the corner and quietly talking with man and woman, who had Uchiha crest on their clothes. He groaned and it was noticed by them that he was awake. Hokage looked at Naruto and later at Fugaku, silent messages being exchanged between them. They couldn't decide who should explain all of this to Naruto. It was a touchy subject and it needed to be done gently and slowly. Aged leader slowly nodded towards Fugaku and moved towards Naruto, thinking how to put in words what he wanted to tell Naruto. Naruto-kun, I see that you are awake, said Hokage sitting on the chair that was standing to the left of the bed. How are you feeling? Good, said Naruto. What happened to me? You were attacked by a mob. Carefully said Hokage, but that's not important. Do you know how to channel your chakra? Yes, replied Naruto, we were taught that last year at the academy. Good, said Hokage, channel it into your eyes. Naruto focused on his chakra, trying it to channel into his eyes. He pushed it into them and he felt a sudden change when he did that. He was able to see further and with greater detail, not to mention that he was able to see chakra cores and what would happen in near future. He was unaware that Fugaku and Makoto were looking at him, rather curiously, especially at his Sharingan, as it seemed to be spinning faster and faster, like it was trying to evolve even further, which technically should be impossible as Manjikyu was known to manifest under different circumstances. Yet 3 tomos that were circling around the dot in the middle of the eye were spinning faster and faster. After few moments of it, they were almost blurs and impossible to recognize. It was a sign that Sharingan was evolving even further. After few minutes of such a fast spinning, they stopped, revealing new patterns inside of Naruto's eyes. It was fabled Manjikyu Sharingan. One that Naruto had was quite an interesting one. It was a 3-pointed pinwheel, and between prongs were tomo in places they would usually occupy in normal Sharingan. When it fully evolved, it glowed menacingly, and Naruto looked at everybody in the room. Even famous Uchiha control over emotions couldn't prevent Fugaku from gawking like a fish. They managed to hide their shock when they saw Naruto looking at them. Looks like you have a Sharingan, said Hokage, looking at the Naruto, and it looks like it is quite a special one. Gigi, what do you mean by that? Asked Naruto, and at those words Hokage looked at Fugaku, who only nodded. Hokage-sama means that it is Manjikyu Sharingan, explained Fugaku. I believe there were total 5 Uchiha that managed to unlock it before you. 2 of which are currently living, you are 6th one that unlocked it. It has some special abilities, but those can wait for later time. Hokage-sama, if you could do the honors. He said those words and was one of few people that managed to silence Naruto without any troubles. Ah yes, said Hokage, mindlessly straightening his robe, which was a sign that he was a little uncomfortable and wasn't sure how to handle this thing. Let's jump back in time 8 years or so. As you know, or at least should know, it was the time of Yondaime Hokage, Kiroi Senko Namikaze Minato. His wife was Uzumaki Kushina, princess of Uzushigakure, sister village of Konoha. When Naruto heard those words, something clicked in his mind and his jaw dropped. Uzumaki, softly said Naruto. I see that you made the connection between those 2 things, said Hokage, and took out small picture of Minato from his robe and handed it to Naruto, whose eyes widened when he saw the obvious resemblance between himself and Namikaze Minato. Those same spiky golden hairs, same stark blue eyes, and only thing that was different were 3 birthmarks on Naruto's face. Nobody spoke for a moment, letting Naruto get over the fact that he wasn't some nameless and clanless orphan. "Is it true?" quietly asked Naruto, not sure if he was seeing it right. For him, it looked impossible to believe. "It is," said Hokage, and before he could speak anything more, he was interrupted by outburst from Naruto, famous Uzumaki temper manifesting itself in interesting way. "Why did you never tell me? Why?" yelled Naruto, and Hokage let him vent off his anger and emotion, as he knew well that in similar situation he would also have troubles keeping his emotions under control. "Naruto, calm down," sternly said Hokage, and Naruto nodded, calming himself down. Because of who he was, he made too many powerful enemies, and many of them would simply kill you for the sake of making sure he didn't left any heirs. So I decided that you would be given maiden name of your mother. I wanted to reveal it to you once you are made Chunin, but in this case my hand was forced. It was written in his last will and testament that if you were to unlock Sharingan, you were supposed to be adopted into Uchiha clan. To be exact, by his brother, but that's not my part of the story to tell. "If not yours, then whose?" asked Naruto in somewhat shaky voice. He had troubles believing in what he was hearing. It looked almost impossible to believe, at least for him. "Mine," said Fugaku, getting attention of everybody in the room, as he recently rarely spoke about his late brother due to sorrow and grief he felt. "Minato was my brother. My father had 2 wives. First one was Senju Naomi, and with her he had Minato. Naomi was a sister of Tsunade and only Senju that showed signs of having Mokutan. Soon after Minato was born, his death and Naomi were faked so that she could raise him without fear of assassins going after them. When he said that, he glanced at Mikoto, who nodded. "We would love to adopt you into Uchiha clan and as our 5th son. Do you accept?" Naruto was speechless and wide-eyed for a moment. He couldn't believe that his dreams were going to be fulfilled. He was going to have a family. He burst crying for a moment, until he managed to compose himself. It was obvious that he was happy. He wanted to have a family, and Mikoto could see that rather easily. "Yes," said Naruto, and on Fugaku's face appeared smile. He completely dropped mask that he usually wore. He was in private, so he let his emotions show. He was happy, and only best intentions were visible across his face, but inside he was planning how to deal with fallout of that decision. Good thing was that it was beginning of a week and they could organize everything before shit was going to hit the fan. Civilians were going to throw a fit about it, and they would use every single thing that was accessible to them. Some of them were rather drastic. So suggesting that someone would shadow him at all times wouldn't be a bad idea, or maybe leave from the academy, and suggestion that Itachi would teach him some basics of Interceptor Fist and other basic things first. "You are free to be released from the hospital," said Mikoto softly. "So unless you have something precious in your previous flat that you want to take, we will go directly into the district." "No, I don't think I have anything precious in my flat," said Naruto slowly, before repeating that more confidentially. "No, I don't have anything precious there." "Okay," said Mikoto, "we will go to the district now, and do shopping once we are there. Clothes, ninja supplies, and other necessities." Naruto only followed and let Mikoto to shunshin him with her to the entrance of Uchiha Mansion. When they appeared there, Naruto went wide-eyed when he saw the building in front of him. It looked huge, and it was huge. Uchiha Mansion was 2-story tall building with most of the ground floor occupied by rooms used during formal meetings and during training, that is, large dining room big enough to house a dinner for 50 people. There was also a private dojo for usage of people inhabiting it, along with jutsu library. On the first floor were rooms for members of clan head family to live in, along with living room and kitchen. Last but not least was second floor, which was occupied mostly by storage rooms and second library. Behind the building there was a small private training ground for the usage of people living in it when they wanted to practice jutsu and didn't fancy being seen doing that. "It's huge," said Naruto, causing Mikoto to chuckle. "You will get used to it," she said softly. Almost everybody has similar reaction when he sees it for the first time. "Come in." They walked inside slowly, and Naruto looked around in awe. Everything around screamed wealth and power. Precious painting on the walls, statues placed in alcoves that were lining the walls. It looked beautiful. They climbed the stairs up and entered area where everybody was living. Wealth of Uchiha was still obvious, but it wasn't flaunted as it was done downstairs. Here it was shown in subtler way in quality of this standing there, but yet that was expected as they were one of the noble clans. They walked across the short corridor until they arrived at the end of it and stood in front of sliding door. Mikoto opened it and Naruto was able to see a large room, painted in neutral colors. It was a rather large room with few weapon stands and shelves for scrolls or books standing in the corner and by the left wall, not to mention that there were few drawers and wardrobes. There were also sizable windows that provided plenty of light, and by them stood a large desk for his usage. Over those windows could be drawn crimson-red curtains. Floor of it was covered in rugs and tatami mats over dark brown wooden floor. Naruto got wide-eyed when he saw the whole room, and Mikoto chuckled when she saw his reaction. She noticed that he was shocked by it, as it was expected from him. She knew where he was living and this room was probably larger than his whole flat. "That will be your room," she said, and Naruto nodded. "Mikoto-chan," said Fugaku, and getting her attention. "Why don't you go shopping with Naruto and settle him in, while I will find Itachi, as I want to talk with him about Manjikyu Sharingan." "Of course," said Mikoto and looked at Naruto, who nodded. After Fugaku left Mikoto and Naruto, he walked down the stairs and towards dojo where Itachi should be training Interceptor Fist with Shursui, as he was supposed to do at least. He walked towards it and he heard clashes of bones coming from inside, which meant they were doing that as they were supposed to be doing. He opened the doors and saw them clashing in the middle of the room, and they stopped the moment they noticed him. "To-san," said Itachi when he saw him. "What do you need?" "You both know that Naruto has Sharingan?" Fugaku asked, just to be sure that they knew it, and they only nodded. "When we were to pick him up it evolved even further." "Fugaku-san," said Shursui, getting his attention, "you don't mean Manjikyu?" "Mine and Itachi one manifested when we saw Izumi being killed in front of us." "Yes, I mean Manjikyu," said Fugaku and looked at Itachi, who was deep in his thought and his face was impossible to read. "Itachi, I would like you to work with Naruto on his Sharingan, Interceptor Fist and general basics, as civilians will be doing everything in their power to annoy us or injure him." "I can do that," said Itachi and looked at his father. "What about Sasuke? He doesn't like Naruto and he might throw a temper tantrum. Also, he will be envious that Naruto got Manjikyu, assuming he will learn about it." "He should see a reason," said Fugaku, "especially once I will explain to him why Naruto is adopted and who he is." "I guess you are right," said Itachi and looked at Shursui. "We will finish it later. I will be busy with teaching Naruto." "Have fun teaching that runt," said cheerfully Shursui, before leaving Fugaku and Itachi in the dojo. "I will have fun," said Itachi and added more quietly, "or at least I hope to have it. If he is anything like his father, you will have a lot of fun, and he is half Uzumaki, which means amounts of chakra that can make Jonin envious," said Fugaku, who managed to overheard what Itachi said. "But remember that in the academy they probably taught him wrong." "Something else that I should know?" asked Itachi. "I would like you to show him basics of Kenjutsu, as I'm going to give him weapons of his parents," said Fugaku, and Itachi nodded. "Let's see," said Itachi, making a list of things he needed to show to Naruto. "Basics from the academy. Check them to see if someone didn't teach him wrong. Interceptor Fist, Sharingan Jutsu, which by default includes Katan Jutsu and Kenjutsu. I didn't miss anything." "Yes," said Fugaku, getting attention of Itachi. "Try to do something about that conflict between him and Sasuke, and be a good older brother to him." "I thought that I mentioned those two things," said Itachi, looking out of the dojo and into the garden that was behind the mansion and currently was almost empty. It would a long day and a long week in front of him. It will be an interesting thing to do and probably fun one as well. "Not only for you," said Fugaku, and Itachi nodded in agreement. "Mainly for him. He never had a family before, he was an orphan since his birth." "Yes," agreed Itachi. There was also a problem with Naruto being a Jinchuriki, but with that they would wait and introduce him to Kyuubi when he would be mentally ready. But he would have a huge advantage over previous Jinchuriki of it. He would be an Uchiha, which meant Sharingan, and that Kyuubi was more willing to listen to reasons when he was going to see Sharingan. Meanwhile, Mikoto managed to drag Naruto for shopping and got back with him while they were talking about his training. She got for him everything that could be useful or needed by him, and now he looked half decent. He was wearing beige shorts that went slightly over the knees, blue t-shirt with Uchiha fan on the back of it, and under it mesh armor one. Lower part of his legs were covered in bandages. On his right hand was a simple bracelet, with Uzumaki swirls and Namikaze's wolf. Think about sign used by witchers and you will know what I mean by that. Also on his hip was double kunai holster, and on his belt were 2 utility pouches with ninja tools and miscellaneous things that all ninja carried and needed to have. "He looks well," said Itachi when he finally saw Naruto. "At least better than he was looking," said Makoto. "I will leave him with you as I know that Tusen spoke with you about checking what he knows and correcting any mistakes." "Indeed he spoke," said Itachi, and Makoto nodded. Naruto stood there unsure what to do. Itachi noticed that and looked at him, smiling a little and sitting on the floor of dojo, which was covered in tatami mats, that normally softened the impact during training, especially during interceptor fist training, as it used to be one that usually ended with people on the ground. "Come here, I won't bite you." "Sure, Enai-san," said Naruto, testing the waters, and walked to the place where Itachi was sitting. He sat there on the tatami mat in front of Itachi and was able to take a better look at the inside of dojo. He saw that near the walls were placed both normal swords and wooden ones, called bakken, and they were used during initial stages of kenjutsu training when it was too dangerous to use normal sword. Itachi smiled when Naruto used Enai-san in relation to him. It sounded good and right to be used, but he was shocked that Naruto was so fast to adapt. "Well," said Itachi with thin smile, "Tusen asked me to check what you know and correct any mistakes that Academy could make, and they are known for making them. What do you know about chakra?" "It's made out of physical and mental energy," replied Naruto. "At least they didn't make mistakes in complete basics," said Itachi, looked at Naruto and slowly let his mask slip from his face. "Can you name and show me all 12 basic seals?" Naruto nodded and made those seals. As he was making them, he was saying their names. Tori, bird; I, boar; Inu, dog; Tatsu, dragon; Ushi, ox; Tora, tiger; Mi, snake; Narat, Uma, horse; Saru, monkey; Yu, hare; Hitsuji, ram. There are some small flaws in them, but that's usual thing for all shinobi to have, and they will mostly correct on their own," said Itachi with his Sharingan active to see the flow of chakra as Naruto was making those seals. While Sharingan didn't show pathways in Tenketsu, it allowed to see general flow of chakra inside a body and allowed to see how it was being formed when using hand seals. He also allowed steady and small trickle of amber chakra into chakra system of Naruto. It was purified chakra of Kyuubi, and it was constantly increasing amount of chakra that was available to Naruto. "Otudo, can you make ram seal and keep it for as long as you can?" Itachi asked Naruto. "Why?" asked Naruto. "I want to see how much chakra you have," explained Itachi. "I want to see if I'm only seeing things or you have as much chakra as should have someone with high jonin level. Because that would explain why you would have troubles with bunshin and leaf spinning exercise." Naruto only nodded and placed his hands in ram seal. He started channeling chakra through it, and Itachi looked at the watch that was on his hand and later at Naruto, who seemed to be enveloped in blue hue of chakra, his hairs slightly raising. While Naruto was doing that, Itachi looked at him with his Sharingan active, estimating how much chakra he had, and his initial estimates were correct, which was expected from his, as he was half-blood Uzumaki and had also blood of Senju and Uchiha, who also had rather big amount of chakra at their disposal, and it was incredibly dense. This could cause quite a few interesting problems, and he would probably show him quickly tree and water walking, as his control without them was atrocious and leaf spinning was useless for him. It was as useful as attempting to block flow of the water in giant river with only pebbles. Apparently such large and constant output of chakra was noticed by Makoto, who walked down to dojo and entered it, but stopped when she saw that Itachi, pressed his finger against his lips and pointed at Naruto, who seemed to be channeling that chakra. When she saw what was happening, she only nodded and quietly left. It was a usual thing to do when checking how much chakra had someone, and in this case it looked like a lot. Unless someone had a lot of chakra, it never manifested outside of his body in such amounts. There was a difference between keeping seal constantly active and using it for a short amount of time during preparations to launch jutsu. Keeping it constantly active was more exhausting the longer it was kept, and not many were able to go for more than 15 minutes. When just flashing through hand seals, it was only a short burst or pulse of chakra, and it was almost impossible to notice. Only final seal was requiring more chakra, and it decided about strength of the jutsu. Itachi was glancing at the watch and on to Naruto, wondering when he was going to stop channeling the chakra. It seemed that Naruto was going for over 15 minutes and was still going, which was enough for him. It meant that he had high jonin chakra levels, and that would be an interesting issue, extremely interesting one. "That's enough," calmly said Itachi, and Naruto opened his eyes and stopped channeling the chakra. Looks like you have high Jonin reserves and they will only increase. I have only average Jonin level ones and Sasuke should have around high Genin level if I remember correctly. Sweet, yelled Naruto. I have more chakra than Sasuke. But he didn't have much time to cheer, as he was brought down onto the ground by Itachi. But your control over it is atrocious, said Itachi, and noticed that Naruto slumped. I will show you how to get control over it, but that will be later. Now I want to talk with you about Uchiha clan taijutsu style. You probably saw it when Sasuke used it or other Uchiha kids at the academy. Naruto only winced when he remembered those fights against Sasuke. They didn't end well. I remember seeing them using it. They were almost impossible to pin down. Yep, that's it, said Itachi. It's based on avoiding being hit and responding with quick strikes. You attack and jump away. It can work without Sharingan, but it won't be at its fullest. That is because of one of many abilities of Sharingan. One that allows us to predict what is going to happen. And I-san, what do you mean by that? Asked Naruto, not sure what Itachi meant. Activate yours and I will show you what I mean, replied Itachi, and Naruto nodded. His normal cerulean blue eyes changed into red and black of Sharingan. When Itachi saw it, he threw at Naruto a small ball that he had handy for showing him this thing. Naruto moved to catch it, and he did that without any problems, and it wasn't a conscious decision of his body, but one fueled by Sharingan and his instincts. That is what I mean by ability to predict. You saw where it was going to be, so you were able to intercept it. Cool, said Naruto, and Itachi only smiled. Not many knew, but he was extremely protective of his family and was one of those that had a questionable pleasure of guarding Naruto before he became an Uchiha, and he became somewhat protective of him. Yes, it is handy, agreed Itachi. I will show you basic katas of it and you will train them. Normally I wouldn't say that you do that, but watch me with your Sharingan and try to copy those moves. It will help you a lot. After that, Itachi for next 30 minutes was slowly going through katas of Interceptor Fist and allowing Naruto to copy them with his Sharingan. While he was doing that, he was explaining to him how to use them and when to use which one. He was surprised when Naruto was able to learn them quickly and understand them. When he looked through Naruto Academy grades, they were the lowest of low, just enough to pass. It meant that someone was sabotaging him or Naruto was learning things better when going at his own pace, or mix of both of those things. If Itachi was going to bet, he would say it was the mix of those two things. Now academy instructors would have troubles with sabotaging him, especially with him or Tusan looking over their shoulder and making sure they were playing by the rules. Also that they weren't giving him wrong instructions and or grading his work unfairly, which was almost impossible with Sasuke being there. Assuming they would dare to do so, but they were unpredictable and weren't paragons of logic and intelligence. Those are all katas of our taijutsu style, and I would like you to go through all of them, said Itachi when he was done showing all of them to Naruto. I want to make sure you learned them correctly, and do not make any mistakes in them. Naruto only nodded at those words. He was learning more and far quicker than he was learning at the academy. He also felt that Itachi was genuinely caring about his well-being, and he appreciated that. He didn't know how, but he was able to somehow feel emotions of other in relation to him, and when he was here, he only felt good or at least neutral emotions, which was a huge change compared to what he felt when he was in the village, where he was surrounded by the sea of hatred and anger. It's good, said Itachi, when he saw how Naruto was going from kata to kata of Interceptor Fist. You only need to practice it, but that's thing that everybody needs to do. I will spar few times with you so that you can get used to this style. It's different from Tiger Fist that you were taught at the academy, so you will need to forget all things you have learned about taijutsu. Let's do that, said Naruto, and Itachi nodded, smiling. They raised from the floor and stood some distance away from each other, both of them in the opening kata of Interceptor Fist, and were looking at each other, looking for holes in defense of their enemy, while their Sharingan were slowly spinning. Naruto charged at Itachi, who simply sidestepped and dodged entirely the attack, much to Naruto's annoyance at such thing. He looked at Itachi, and this time he tried to aim better and almost managed to hit him, but yelped in surprise when he passed just above the Itachi, who dodged under it and looked at Naruto with amusement. Think more, attack less, said Itachi, and blocked strike aimed at his head. He caught outstretched leg, and when he did that, Naruto's eyes widened in surprise. He didn't expect something like that to happen to him. Being rash isn't the best thing. he added and lightly punched Naruto in his gut, sending him onto the ground where he landed in a heap of tangled limbs and groaned getting up. "You're nasty," groaned Naruto, getting back on his feet and looking at Itachi with some anger and resentment visible in his eyes. "Me?" asked Itachi, and Naruto only nodded. "I don't remember being such. I just showed you your mistake." "Annoying and Isan," said Naruto, charging at Itachi, this time being more careful with what he was doing, his Sharingan spinning and trying to anticipate what Itachi was going to do. Being more careful was paying off, and he didn't get caught in simple and stupid traps that were waiting for him, at least not that easily and quickly. They spent more than 30 minutes doing that, and when they were done with it, Naruto looked a little battered and was covered in sweat. But he was starting to learn how to use this style, and he was natural with it, which honestly for Itachi wasn't a huge surprise, especially considering how his body was built and who was his father. Famous Konoha no Kiroisenko was mainly a speed fighter, not a strength fighter, and he would better utilize Interceptor Fist than a Tiger Fist, which was a basic style taught to every shinobi at the academy, assuming they weren't learning Taijutsu style of their clan. "That wasn't too bad," said Itachi when they were done with training. He still couldn't believe how much energy had Naruto. He knew he would have a lot, but that was just wow. He had a lot of energy, and burning it would be a huge problem. "You seem to grasp the basics of it, and Sharingan is only helping with it. Next thing I want to talk with you is a little touchy, and you probably won't be too happy with it." "What do you mean by that?" asked Naruto, noticing that Itachi shifted uncomfortably and his emotions changed to somewhat troubled ones, like he didn't know how or didn't want to touch upon the subject. "Sasuke, or rather your rivalry with him," explained Itachi, and Naruto immediately tensed at those words. "I don't want you to outright like him, but I won't tolerate your competition with him, at least not one filled with hatred and anger. Healthy competition is good, but not the ones you two have." When Naruto heard those words, he hissed. He didn't like Sasuke too much, and that feeling was mutual. That only confirmed Itachi's suspicions, as he was rather good at reading people and their minds, and now Naruto was showing exactly what he thought and felt about Sasuke. "I will try," said Naruto, "but I do not promise anything. I don't like him too much, and I don't think he will agree." "Give him a shot," said Itachi. "He should see some reasons." "I hope so," said Naruto, as he didn't want to have this conflict with Sasuke. "Good," said Itachi and looked at Naruto. "What do you truly know about Sharingan? Powers and stages of it?" "Not much really," replied Naruto, and Itachi nodded. "Then it will take some time to explain," said Itachi, getting Naruto attention. "It normally has 3 stages of evolution. It starts with only 1 tomo, and it allows to copy taijutsu, 2 tomo allow to copy ninjutsu, and finally 3 allow it to copy all ninjutsu and genjutsu. It also allows to see chakra to some degree and distinguish the source of it. While you won't see pathways in tenketsu, you will be able to estimate general amount of it and color of it, thus distinguishing between people. When active, you can see further and far clearer. You see details that are almost impossible to see, moving lips, scribbling of pencil on paper, and so on. It also allows you to see what will happen and act account, but for that you also needs to train your body. Last, but not least, it allows you to cast powerful genjutsu with it and breaks any placed on you." "Cool," said Naruto, and Itachi only nodded in agreement. "I wouldn't call it like that, but you are right," said Itachi, "but there is second part of it that not many know. Tusan probably mentioned it to you, Manjikyu Sharingan, which is a very rare thing. You are one of 3 alive Uchiha that have it, and only one that can safely use it without getting blind." "Who are other 2? asked Naruto. "That would be me and Shursui," explained Itachi, and Tomo in his Sharingan started spinning faster and faster until they morphed into 3-pointed shuriken, black on the red background. It glowed menacingly when it stopped spinning, and Itachi looked at Naruto. "Can you show me yours?" Naruto only nodded. His eyes changed into red and black of Sharingan, and Tomo started spinning faster and faster until they were blurs, and when they stopped, Manjikyu Sharingan form of Naruto was visible. It had usual 3 tomo of normal Sharingan, but it also had 3-pointed pinwheel, and those tomo were between the prongs. "That's how it looks." "Interesting," said Itachi, looking at it. "There are some powers of it, and unless you use them accidentally, I won't show them to you, until you will be at least proficient with normal Sharingan. They are taxing on both mind and body, so I want to make sure that you know how to use the basics without delving deeper into details. Itachi and I, please? Asked Naruto, pouting and making puppy eyes that worked on almost everybody. Nope, 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 said Itachi, trying not to look into those eyes as they were rather convincing. Otudo, pouting and puppy eyes won't work on me. Why? Asked Naruto. Because nope, said Itachi and looked outside, thinking how to divert attention from Sharingan and not to brought it up anytime soon. Come on, I might as well show you basics of Shuriken Jutsu. Fine, said Naruto and walked after Itachi outside, into the garden and threw it into a large, private training ground behind it. There were few tree stumps there and multiple of shuriken and kunai targets, not to mention that the ground was covered in multiple scorch marks from Keton and Raitun Jutsu. Show me what you know, said Itachi and grabbed kunai from kunai holster on his hip. He threw it at the target that was on the opposite end of training field. Try to hit as close to it as you can. Throw 10 kunai. Let's see, said Naruto and calmed himself down, before throwing kunai one after one. Itachi meanwhile was watching him closely and looking for any mistakes and wrong position. He grimaced when he saw a classical example of sabotaging training in subtle manner that only more experienced shinobi were able to easily notice. It was something that messed up the trajectory of projectile so completely that it was hard to believe. Naruto threw 10 kunai and most of them flied wildly all around the target. Only 3 managed to hit it and only 1 got close to the middle of it. When Itachi saw it, he couldn't believe how bad was the aim of Naruto and after that replayed his technique in his mind, searching for other reasons and he spotted few more. That's the worst aim I ever saw, said Itachi and looked at Naruto next time, threw them when exhaling. If you are doing that when inhaling you completely mess up your aim and path if it. Try doing it again, but this time with them being thrown when exhaling. It should be somewhat better. Naruto nodded and once again thrown 10 kunai, most of which got closer to the intended target and to the middle of it. His eyes widened when he saw how much his accuracy improved by changing such simple thing. He glanced at Itachi and saw that he was smiling, which Naruto noticed was a rare thing to do for him. How it was? Naruto asked after throwing last one. Way better, said Itachi and ruffled Naruto's hair. There are several things that need to be improved, but we will tackle them one at the time. Now I think that Kasan made lunch and that Sasuke will be any time now inside of the district. At first words on Naruto's face appeared smile, but at the mention of second some sort of scowl. It was going to get tense. After they finished Shurikenjutsu training, Naruto went to his room to drop off his ninja supplies and later walked to the bathroom to clean himself after that training. His whole body was aching and was covered in sweat and dirt from being thrown around the dojo by Itachi, which wasn't the most pleasant thing that happened to him. It happened only few times as Naruto quickly learned how to avoid getting hurled across dojo, yet it still ached as hell. When Naruto was cleaned, he was wearing almost exactly the same clothes as before, but there were 2 differences. He didn't have on him any of his ninja equipment and on sleeves of his t-shirt was Wolf of Namikaze. It wasn't big as it would get attention of almost everybody, but it was there so that Naruto could have some sort of connection with his father. However, he was unaware of what he would soon receive and that it belonged to his parents and was used by them on the battlefields during multiple battles fought by them. Naruto walked to the dining room and sat at one of the places around the table, wondering how Sasuke was going to react to seeing him. If he was going to guess, he would say that Sasuke wouldn't know what was happening or what had happened. When Sasuke was in the academy, he was wondering what was going on as he knew that situation in the village was rather tense and there were rumors about executions of prominent civilians, along with miscellaneous shinobi and civilians that got caught in the mix. There was also things that were going on inside of the clan. He knew that Itachi was hiding something, along with his parents. When he crossed the border of district, he noticed that people that were guarding main entrance to it were tense and their Sharingan were constantly active. Like they were looking for troubles and they feared they could happen anytime soon. It caused his suspicions and curiosity to skyrocket as such things rarely happened. He was walking like nothing happened and wasn't even suspecting the surprise he was going to have the moment he was going to enter the mansion and see who was there. Sasuke entered the mansion as if nothing happened and walked up the stairs towards the part of it where they were living. He walked towards dining room and stopped dead in his tracks when he saw who was sitting to the right of Itachi. After that his eyes widened even more when he saw that he was wearing typical clothes of Uchiha. What is he doing here? He asked, walking forward and pointing at Naruto. It seems you were out of the loop for last few days, said Itachi, teasing him a little. Aniki, what do you mean by that? Asked Sasuke, slowly moving forward and eyeing Naruto carefully, who seemed not to care at all about those glances and looks he was receiving. Itachi means by that I officially adopted Naruto, said Fugaku, because of who was his father and certain clause in last will of his father. Who is his father? Asked Sasuke. Parentage of Naruto was kept as a secret for the sake of his security. Nobody fancied keeping away swarms of assassins, whose sole purpose was to kill an infant. You see his sculpture every day you walk through the village, said Fugaku, causing Sasuke to stop for a moment. When he realized whom his father meant, his eyes widened with realization. It could only mean one of the 4 Hokage of the Konoha, and since 2 were dead for last 30 or so years and current one was a little too old to have such a young son, it left only one candidate. Also hair color didn't match at all. "Two-san, you don't mean Namikaze Minato?" asked warily Sasuke. "Yes, I mean him. He was my half-brother and in his will, he asked me to adopt Naruto in case he unlocks Sharingan," explained Fugaku and looked at Naruto. "Can you activate your Sharingan?" "Of course, Two-san," replied Naruto, and his eyes turned red and black of Sharingan. After a moment, Tomos started spinning faster and faster, turning into Manjikyu form of it, causing Sasuke to get a little envy. "I think that's enough of proof," said Itachi, looking at Naruto and Sasuke. "I want both of you to be at least civil with each other. I already explained it to Naruto and he agreed to ceasefire and maybe friendship." "Of course, Aniki," said Sasuke, knowing well that arguing would be pointless. But he also sensed something in Naruto that made him wonder if that idiot who he was at the academy was his true face. He looked more confident, more firm, it was hard to explain, but he was looking completely different than at the academy, or maybe those clothes changed him so much. "Since this little thing is explained," said Fugaku, taking out long box made out of polished wood. It looked like it could store 1 or 2 sets of swords. It was hard to tell. "Those weapons should belong to you, Naruto," he added and handed it across the table to Naruto, who placed it in front of him and opened. When he peered inside, his lips managed to escape weak "wow." Inside of it were one of the most beautiful swords he ever saw. On the red velvet were laying 2 katana, with matte black scabbards on which were etched images of lunging dragons, and at the bottom of them was visible crest of Uzumaki clan. Hilt was made out of black wood, into which were encrusted small diamonds and rubies, and it was covered in red silk ribbon. Guard of the blade was shaped to resemble open head of dragon, made out of gold with rubies as eyes of it, and from which emerged actual blade, which was pitch black and was made out of version of chakra steel that was only created by blacksmiths of Uzushio, and it made them extremely hard and elastic. Breaking one was almost impossible, and they were able to cut through almost any material. On the blade was etched image of lunging dragon. Besides those swords were placed 2 shorter blades, around 20 inches long. Their scabbards were made out of wolf, which was painted golden, and at the bottom of it was image of wolf head with red eyes, symbol of Namikaze clan. Actual blades were masterpieces, and it was obvious that they were a clan weapon. Pommel of them was shaped to resemble snarling head of wolf with 2 pieces of citron as eyes of wolf. Handle was made out of black wood and was covered in crisscrossing pattern of red, white, and black silk ribbons, colors of Uchiha and Senju clans. Assuming someone was able to see them and was able to guess the meaning behind them. Guard of the blade was shaped to resemble snarling head of wolf, from which emerged actual blade. Blade was made out of rare alloy of chakra steel, one in which were embedded veins of gold, and one that glowed gold when chakra was channeled through it. "Are those blades of Uzushikage that were brought here by Uzumaki Kushina when she arrived here? I remember that she was a daughter of last Uzushikage and she received them from her father," asked Itachi, peering inside. Those were one of the most famous weapons in the world, and almost everybody heard tales or stories about them. Obviously those sabers are ones that gave Namikaze Minato his nickname, along with his jutsu. "They are," said Fugaku. "Last 8 years they spent closed inside of our vault, and not many even knew that they were placed there." "They are beautiful," said Naruto, closed the lid of it and placed it on the ground to his right. "Thank you, Two-san." "It was nothing," replied Fugaku and looked at Itachi. "Can you show Naruto how to use them? Or should I ask Kakashi to do that?" "What about me?" asked Sasuke, who felt ignored. "Why not?" Swords are a handy tool in battle, said Fugaku, and Sasuke nodded. I should be able to do that, said Itachi, and considering it for a moment. I should be able to do basics with him during this week, and assuming he will have usually Uzumaki talent in relation to blades. He should grasp basics of sword fighting in 2 weeks or so. Assuming I won't use my favorite shortcut for training monotone things, and he is probably only person since time when Sandaime-sama was in his prime that can fully utilize it without getting killed. You don't mean Kage Bunshin? Asked Fugaku. As all Jonin and some of Chunin knew this jutsu, it was versatile and had multiple uses, but most of shinobi couldn't afford more than 1 or 2 clones. Yes, agreed Itachi. Naruto has more chakra than I have. How can Naruto have more chakra that you have? Asked Sasuke. Because of being Uzumaki through his mother, explained Itachi. When dealing with Uzumaki, they created completely new scale to measure how much chakra they have. Average Jonin have as much as their typical genin. Their Kage had over 20 times more than our average Kage, but they had atrocious chakra control. So that's why Naruto can't make normal Bunshin? Asked Sasuke. Yes, said Itachi, and if those instructors had something that was able to think inside of their heads, they would have guessed the reason for his inability to use those jutsu, and would either show him exercises that would help him with chakra control or would show him other type of Bunshin. Well, we can worry about that later, said Makoto. Important is that Naruto is here and he get proper education and training. Along with you, Sasuke. They nodded and focused on eating while talking about everything and nothing. Naruto was unaware about what was waiting for him later after that lunch. Itachi managed to get himself 3 weeks long break so that he could train Naruto, and he wanted to use it to its fullest. When meal of over, Itachi told Naruto to meet him in the garden behind training field they used earlier that day. Now it was part for more boring part of training, that is academics and theory. Nothing practical, as training too much would be a bad thing to do, and he was going to introduce him to full training regime later so that it wouldn't cover the same things as academy was, but was going alongside it, and he had planned nature manipulation and shape with him and Sasuke once Naruto was going to come back to academy so that they would be on the same level. Good that you are here, said Itachi, noticing Naruto walking towards him. It will be something more pleasant for you than being thrown around dojo by me. And I-san, what that will be? Asked Naruto, eager to learn something new. Theory, academics, and few miscellaneous things that are rather important, replied Itachi, and Naruto only groaned, but nodded and sat across Itachi under one of many trees that were growing in the garden and were providing shadow from afternoon sun. Itachi chose this place on purpose as he knew that there would be peace and not many would know how to find it, especially with dozens of genjutsu he placed around it, just to make it harder to find for other people. Fine, groaned Naruto, and Itachi nodded. Let's start with something that shouldn't be boring for you and might be quite useful for you, said Itachi, and looked at Naruto. Activate your Sharingan and see if you can spot my chakra. There's nothing at all, said Naruto when he saw exactly nothing, like Itachi didn't have a chakra at all. Correct, said Itachi. There are ways to suppress the chakra, and it's especially useful when you want to sneak unnoticed. Can you tell me what I did? You forced it to stay inside of your body? Half asked, half replied Naruto. Not exactly, said Itachi. Normally chakra is flowing around your body without any pattern or reason. When you learn to control it, you tame it and it flows in more controlled manner. But you can force it to stay inside of pathways and only there without going outside. How can I do that? Asked Naruto. First you will need to get chakra control to decent level, replied Itachi. Talking about chakra control, you were showed leaf spinning exercise at the academy. But for you it won't work, tree walking and water walking not so much. I will show them to you, but later. First I will show you something that should do the trick. What's that? Asked Naruto. Kunai hovering exercise. It is normally learned by Jonin, medics, and ANBU, said Itachi, mainly because of amount of chakra it requires. You push chakra through tenketsu that are placed on your hand, and you try to use it to keep kunai on even level above your palm. Once Naruto nodded that he understood, Itachi took out single kunai and put it above his hand, and it stood there, being held by his chakra. Try the same. Naruto took the kunai from Itachi and placed it above his hand and channeled chakra, causing kunai to shot up to over 9 feet. He tried to make amount of chakra and it got lowered to 6 feet. Naruto focused on it and watched it with his active Sharingan, trying to get it under control and to lower it to decent level. After doing that for over 30 minutes, he managed to get it just tad over 4 feet above his hand. Not bad for the first time, said Itachi, watching it with attention, and he heard rustling of leaves behind him. He looked in that direction and on his face appeared smile. It was Shursui trying to find him or spying on them. It was hard to set those two things apart. Shursui, you may come out of hiding. I wondered if Naruto was going to spot me, said brown-haired teen from Uchiha clan. Once he dropped onto ground in front of them. He was wearing black wide-collar t-shirt, beige shorts, and over his head was tied hitae. He was a little taller than Itachi and looked like he was a year or two older. His hairs were as spiky as Naruto ones, and they were in rare for Uchiha color. That is brown. Most of them had pitch-black hairs due to ancient rituals made between them and one of animal clans. Shursui, do you really think that he was going to spot you? I mean, his Sharingan is good and his skills in hiding are good. Really good, I would say. After all, he was able to throw our teams into wild goose chase all over Konoha. But being on the other side isn't the same thing, you should know that. Fine, agreed Shursui and sat on the ground. Reason why I'm here is that there are rumors flying about third Manjikyu Sharingan in the clan, and I wanted to confirm them as I also have one. You were there when Tusan told me about Naruto having Manjikyu, so I don't see a reason in you confirming your rumors, said Itachi. Truth was that I thought I might help you with training him, said Shursui. I have over a month of break as half of my squad is in the hospital, and it will take some time to find replacements and let ones in the hospital heal. I suppose it won't be a bad thing. We all know that you are better at Kenjutsu than I am, said Itachi. And Tusan asked me to show him how to use swords of his parents. Katana and those weird ninjato? Asked Shursui, and Itachi nodded. It will be a fun thing. I usually fight with 2 blades, so it will be a nice thing and easier for me than you. I guess you will do genjutsu, taijutsu, and some of ninjutsu. Yes, said Itachi, also basics that everybody should know and some of our customs. Rest Tusan will cover. Now we are going over basics of academics and theory. Are you completely ignoring me? Asked Naruto, getting their attention, causing Shursui to smile a little at the antics of Naruto. No, said Itachi, since you are so eager to learn. Name all types of elemental chakra and tell UZ which is strong against which and weak against which. Katan, Futon, Raiton, Doton, and Suiton, said Naruto, counting them on fingers of his right hand. But about what is strong and weak against what I don't know. We weren't taught it. Actually, it's quite easy, said Itachi and drew the diagram with elemental chakra on the ground. It was a pentagon with elemental chakra names written at the corners of it. After that, he drew arrows from each to each. Take a look at those arrows and you will get your answer. Naruto looked for a moment at those arrows. After a moment, something clicked in his mind. Katan is strong against Futon and weak against Suiton. Futon is strong against Raiton and weak against Katan. Raiton is weak against Futon and strong against Doton. Suiton is strong against Katan and weak against Doton. Doton is weak against Raiton and strong against Suiton. Correct. There are also several Kekkei Genkai, but they aren't important right now, and you will learn about the in the academy, or I will tell you later when working with Manjikyu, as it might have one, said Itachi and looked at Shursui. What are his affinities in your opinion? He looks like Raiton and Futon, but all Uchiha have Katan as well. So he may have all 3 of them, said Shursui, but until you check it nobody will know. If he will have 3, it will be an interesting challenge. I'm betting on the same ones, said Itachi and rummaged through his pockets, until he found a piece of paper. Channel your chakra into it, he said, handing it to Naruto. Naruto took the paper from Itachi and channeled his chakra into it. When he did that, it split in 2, half of it being burned to ash in extremely white flame while second wrinkled. Can you explain to me what just happened? Asked Naruto when he noticed widened eyes of Itachi and Shursui. They were good at hiding emotions, but having 3 affinities at the age of 8 was a rare thing to have, an extremely precious one as well. You have 3 affinities, said Itachi once he overcame his shock. Futon, Raiton, and Katan. Katan and Raiton being major ones, while Futon minor one. I think I will show you basic exercises that will help you with control of them once we are done with normal chakra control. They can be dangerous if improperly handled, and without decent chakra control you won't do much. I have Keton and Raiton ones, while I believe that Shursui have Futon and Keton. Yes, I have Futon, said Shursui. It's one of the rarest affinities to have in Konoha. If I remember correctly, only 20 ninja have it. Yes, but we are getting sidetracked, said Itachi, noticing incoming storm of questions, and he wanted to stop it before being buried in those questions. I want you to practice that kunai hovering for another 30 minutes and do that each day before you go to sleep. Tomorrow I will show you a workout I would like you to follow, and before I forgot, I will wake you up when I will think it will be a good time to start training. In your room you should have books on clan history and customs. Look through them. Now you are free to go. Naruto disappeared the moment Itachi told him he could go. He is a good kid, said Shursui, and he fits here. Yes, said Itachi. It's a shame that he couldn't be brought up here from the moment he was born. But training him is so much fun. Sometimes he picks up things once he sees them only once, and sometimes I need to show it few times. He is way better than Sasuke, who is boring to teach. You show it once and he learns it almost immediately. So that's why you are so eager to train him? Asked Shursui. Yes, replied Itachi. Also, he is interesting kid. You should like him rather quickly. How long are you planning to train him before allowing him to once again attend the academy? Asked Shursui. 3 or 4 weeks, replied Itachi. Depends how quickly he will be learning, how much I will need to show him, and how much mistakes or errors made by academy instructors I will need to correct. I knew it was bad, but I never know how bad it was, said Shursui. Honestly, it's not that bad, said Itachi. Good thing that I simply told him to ignore Tiger Fist. We both know he is fighting with it. And with Interceptor Fist he will be a lot more effective. Be tomorrow around 8 in the morning in dojo. I would like to see him sparring with someone else. I will be, said Shursui, and they talked for few more minutes. Naruto, after Itachi told him that he was free to go, he ran back to the house and walked to his room, where he sat on the floor by the window and looked through scrolls and books placed on shelves in the room. Most of them were, as Itachi told, about clan customs and history. He picked up one about history and started reading it. It was about more recent history from creation of Konoha to the end of the reign of Yondaime Hokage. That is a little over 70 years of history. 15 of Shodaime, 15 of Nidaime, 30 of Sandaime, and tad over 10 years of the Yondaime. He read it until it was quite late, and after that he dragged his futon from cupboard that was hidden in one of the walls, placed it on the floor of the room, drawn curtains over the windows, changed into his pajama and jumped to sleep. But before doing that, he took weapons of his parents from the box in which they were given to him and placed them in their scabbards and onto weapon stand that was placed in the corner of the room. Everything was a little sore and he was exhausted, but for the first time in ages he felt secure and safe. Previously he couldn't truly rest during the night as he could be attacked at night, so his body was tense all the time, and here he could relax and tensed muscles released and his body drifted into deep sleep. One where he wasn't haunted by nightmares and could soundly sleep in truly his bed, and in one that was comfortable. And without a fear of being attacked at night, which also helped a lot as he could relax his muscles and nerves, which previously even at night were tense. In the morning Naruto woke up right after a sunrise. He could see its rays entering his room through scarlet curtains covering his window and bathing the room with all shades of red. He yawned and looked around as he felt it was early, yet he was full of energy and well rested. Not like he was previously, when in the morning he was half asleep and was almost devoid of any energy. He glanced onto a clock that was on the wall and decided to get some more sleep. After all, he could sleep even more, and it was 7 in the morning, which wasn't the best time to wake up and do some things. It was a time to rest. He once again closed his eyes and went to sleep, only to wake up moments later with a scream when jet of ice-cold water hit him in the face. Naruto woke up with a scream, jumping out of his futon only to find Itachi looking at him and standing in the doors of the room, his fingers in a shape of one of hand seals. On his lips was visible some sort of smile, but it was hard to tell with all of those shadows and weird light patterns. "And I-san, what was that?" asked annoyed Naruto, when he shook water of himself and looked at Itachi, who was standing there. "Wake-up call," only replied Itachi. "Meet me in our dojo in 30 minutes. Take your swords there." After those words Itachi disappeared from the room, causing Naruto to groan. He was being pulled away from him precious sleep and he wasn't happy. 30 minutes later, Naruto was dressed, and after healthy breakfast, he was waiting for Itachi in their dojo, while looking at those blades that were on the ground in front of him. He took them out of their scabbards and looked at them under the light, admiring their beauty and quality of craftsmanship. Naruto heard footsteps on the wooden floor and looked towards source of those noises, and if he was right, there were two sources of them, and he was right as he saw Itachi and Shisui walking towards him. Shisui was carrying on his back two blades, as Naruto was able to see the harness keeping them on his back and hilts of those blades sticking out over his shoulders. "Ohio Naruto-kun," said Shisui, once he was standing beside him and looked at the swords laying on the floor in front of Naruto. "Ohio Shisui-san," replied Naruto, causing Shisui to roll his eyes. "Don't use san with my name," said Shisui. "If you really want to use it, use Kuin or an II. Technically, I'm your second cousin, but I and Itachi are like brothers, so Sasuke is used to calling me an I-san, and I won't mind if you are going to use it." "Okay, Shisui and II," said Naruto, and Shisui nodded. "Good, that's better," said Shisui, as he hated honorifics when dealing with friends or close family. "Since pleasantries are out of the way," said Itachi, getting their attention. "Shisui, can you spar with Naruto, so I can spot any mistakes?" "Sure," agreed Shisui, and both of them walked to the middle of the dojo and fell into opening stance of their style, their Sharingan slowly spinning and looking for openings. Naruto was first to charge at Shisui, who watched him with curiosity and started blocking or dodging those attacks, allowing Itachi to see if there were any mistakes in them. It was easier to spot them in such manner, because you saw it from the side and could fully focus on the form, instead of thinking how to attack the enemy. "That's enough," said Itachi, after watching them for a few minutes as they were clashing around the dojo and fighting each other. He didn't want to tire out Naruto, at least not quickly. They nodded and stopped fighting. Naruto had few bruises and was covered in sweat, but excluding that, he looked like nothing at all happened to him. "You did quite well, also some nice and unpredictable combinations of strikes. You need to work on polishing your katas and on your body." "What do you mean by body?" asked Naruto, unaware of trap into which he was walking. "Working out," replied Itachi. "I would like you to do some light workout, 30 push-ups, squats, jog or two around the district, and whatever else you might want to add into the mix. Just do not overwork yourself. You don't want to suffer from the effects of it. They're not pleasant." "I will try to do that," said Naruto, and Itachi nodded. "Good," said Itachi and looked at him. "Now I think it's time to show you how to properly use those overgrown knives you got." "Overgrown knives?" asked somewhat amused Shisui. "We both know that they're far more deadly than normal kunai, which should be easily cut in half by them." "Fine," agreed Itachi, and looked at Naruto. "You probably won't be able to use both of katana as they are a little too large for you, but you shouldn't have any big problems with those sabers and one katana, but using two simultaneously will be too hard. Next question is how you want to carry them around. You have several options. Best ones are on the belt or in the similar harness that Shisui uses." Naruto thought for a moment before he decided on one that he was going to use. "I think I will go for harness." "Rather good choice," commented Itachi. "Easy to access, and they won't get in your way when dodging or doing some taijutsu attacks." "Talking about it," said Shisui, looking through package he had with himself. He got out of it something covered by cloth and threw it at Naruto, who caught it and uncovered. When Naruto saw it, his eyes gleamed with excitement. It was a proper harness to carry such swords on user back with attachment points for attaching scabbards to it so that they wouldn't move and they could be easily accessible. Also, it was made in such way that it could be easily modified as user was growing, and at the front of it was visible Uchiha crest. It was made out of tough leather and with several metal reinforcements to make it tougher. "Thanks, Shisui and I," said Naruto. "No problem, kiddo," said Shisui, and looked at those blades, picking them up and inspecting them closely. They were masterpieces, and it looked like they were well taken care of and were ready to be used. "Now, as Itachi probably said, I'm going to be the one that will show you how to use them safely. He is a good swordsman, as all ANBU are, but I learned it before joining ANBU, so I have way more experience with it, and especially with those types of swords." "Go on," said Naruto, listening and being focused on what Shisui was saying. He was explaining to him how to properly wield the sword and how to maintain one so that it would never dull or get damaged in other way. Hours turned into days and days turned into weeks, and first 2 weeks of Naruto being with Uchiha clan were interesting for him, and he started slowly integrating into Uchiha clan, most of which happily accepted him as one of their own. Currently he was seen sparring in Kenjutsu against Sasuke. They were using only one sword as opposed to normal two Naruto used, as Itachi wanted to give them even chances. Naruto sidestepped thrust aimed towards his chest and replied with his own lunge aimed at Sasuke's arm, who avoided it without any problems. He simply ducked under it and let it harmlessly pass above its designed target. "It seems that you are not going to learn that such things won't work on me," said Sasuke once he was once again standing on the floor of dojo after that dodge of last strike. "TSK, I hoped it would work," replied Naruto and threw his sword into his left hand, surprising Sasuke a lot as he didn't expect such thing. He knew that Naruto was a duelist, but he expected him to favor one hand. "I thought that you preferred your right hand," said Sasuke when he saw that move. "I do, but I also know how to use it with my left hand," replied Naruto and renewed his attacks on Sasuke, who was managing to block most of them, and ones he wasn't able to block, he was at least able to evade. It was an even duel, but it was obvious that Naruto was more natural with his sword and he knew how to use it. "That's enough," said Itachi after few more minutes. Sasuke and Naruto seemed to get along okay, but they still were competing with each other a lot. "You both fight rather well, and it seems that you managed to get better. Sasuke, nice idea with that thrust, but in normal fight you would get beheaded easily. Naruto, not a bad idea with switching hands in the middle of fight. It usually unsettle your enemy." Both of them nodded, shading their swords in scabbards that were on their backs. "Naruto, meet me on the training ground outside in 30 minutes. I want to introduce you to Sharingan Genjutsu and more advanced things you can do with it." "What about me?" asked Sasuke, who managed to unlock his Sharingan during one of more heated duels, where it helped him to dodge under the blade aimed at his head. "It won't work with your Soul Tomo. You will need 3 for it to work as it should," explained Itachi. "Also, some of them require Manjikyu and you won't have it anytime soon, while Naruto has it and it's better for him to be able to control it. If getting angry, he could set someone on fire by accident, and that fire is impossible to extinguish, so it's better that he learns how to control it." "I see your point," said Sasuke and nodded. He appreciated the fact that Naruto got adopted by his father, as Itachi was somewhat more eager to show him thing or two while training Naruto. Also, he was impressed by what Naruto managed to do. He wasn't going to admit that anytime soon, but he suspected that Naruto knew that. 30 minutes later, Naruto was waiting for Itachi on the training ground behind the house. He was sitting there and looking towards the Hokage monument that was visible in the distance. It was one of the best views that he had from here. He somewhat changed from the time he joined Uchiha clan. Those were only 2 short or long weeks, depending on your point of view. For Naruto, they passed in a blink of his eye. He started properly eating, and first changes in his body became visible. It got covered by thin and rapidly growing layer of muscles. Also, it was starting to catch up on lost growth in height. His outfit also slightly changed. Now he was wearing gloves on his hands. They were with metal plates on the outside with Uchiha fan etched in them. Also, his arms were protected by vambraces. They were slightly over the elbow, and they were made out of high-quality steel and were designed to protect against all kinds of attacks that could land on his forearm, but also so that he could use them to block sword strikes. On Naruto's back now there were scabbards in which were placed his sabers and his katana. They were kept in place by harness that he got from Shursui. He looked a lot like a proper shinobi now, not a wannabe that wanted to be one. "What do you know about Genjutsu?" asked Itachi when he noticed where Naruto was and joined him there. "You should learn about them in the academy, or at least manage to find enough in books or scrolls around the house." "They mess with your senses," said Naruto, trying to remember what he learned about them from books and in the academy. "Yeah, and they can be placed," drawled Itachi, hoping that Naruto would guess what he meant. "In our case, using our eyes, but also sound, hands, basically everything. Depends on your creativity." "Yes," agreed Itachi. "I'm going to show you 2 genjutsu that are on their own almost useless and harmless. But they're true power shows when you combine them with other things. You need to use them without shouting the name of it, as when you announce genjutsu, everybody is doing their best to cancel it." "I guess it makes sense," said Naruto. "Now talking about those 2 jutsu." Itachi explained to Naruto what was the purpose of those 2 genjutsu and how they should be used during battles with maximum efficiency. He shouldn't need them at the academy, but some people there were rather unpredictable and known for fighting dirty. So having a surprise or two in the store for them wasn't a bad thing to have. Final week of Naruto leave from the academy passed too quickly for him, and he was going to start once again attending it tomorrow. And since he was now an Uchiha, he was supposed to excel in whatever he was doing. Currently, whole family was sitting around the table and eating late dinner. It got delayed because of Itachi fighting Sasuke and Naruto at the same time, mainly to show them how to combine each other attacks during Taijusta fight, but also so that they could have some fun and to learn how to trust each other. They were getting along with each other, but they seemed still to be a little bit wary of each other. At least it was way better than it was previously when they looked at each other with anger and hate. Now it almost completely disappeared from their eyes. "Naruto," said Fugaku, getting his attention, "we would like you to try your best. Uchiha are supposed to excel at everything we do. But for now, I want you to try your hardest. Same for you, Sasuke." "I will try," said Naruto. "It's getting boring. I mean, I like to train with Itachi and Ai, but too much is boring." "Tusan, did you mention to them what I planned for them for their holidays?" asked Itachi, looking at Fugaku. "No, it was going to be surprise from you for their holidays," said Fugaku, causing Naruto to look at Itachi, questions visible in his eyes. "Aniki," said Naruto, looking at Itachi. "You know that we are going to get it out of you faster or later." "Let's see," said Itachi, getting attention of Naruto and Sasuke. "I thought that you might like to get some more serious training, and we are going for a training trip deep into Hai no Kuni." "Isn't that a bit risky?" asked Makoto, knowing well how dangerous could be such things. "Ka-san, we won't be going alone," replied Itachi. "Shursui is also going with us. But you will learn details once academy is over, and in the meantime I will be teaching you as much as I can." When Itachi explained what was going to happen, Naruto and Sasuke jaws were wide open. They didn't expect that kind of surprise, and it was a nice incentive to work their hardest. "But now have a fun and enjoy the academy," said Makoto, and they nodded while eating their meals. "I hope you won't cause too much havoc in the academy." "I will try not to," said Naruto, "but I won't promise anything." "It will be an interesting time," said Itachi. Only reply from Naruto was typical Uchiha HN, which he was learning to recognize and understand. For the outsiders, they were impossible to distinguish from each other, and they sounded exactly the same. Yet Uchiha were able to pass a lot of information with usage of their Sharingan and HN, which was annoying others to no end. On the next day, Naruto woke up early when the first light was looking through the windows into his room. He shaken off remains of sleep and his dreams rather easily. He was really excited about today and what would happen. He expected rather interesting reactions from other students from his class. Quickly taking the shower and dressing into his usual clothes with his swords on his back and hoping that he wouldn't need to use them as they could easily give away whose son he was. Assuming certain Nara wouldn't dig into data about previous Hokage and that civilian council was silent, which were almost impossible things to happen. He walked downstairs and quickly ate his breakfast, his excitation visible in way he behaved. He managed to get control over his emotions when he was training with Itachi, and now he used those tricks to curb them a little. He calmed himself down and his chakra stopped being so visible and it got hidden inside of his body as it should. "I wonder how many people will try to challenge you," said Sasuke, looking at the Naruto. He remembered that he got his ass handed to him by Naruto during their recent Taijusta spar. "Probably civilians and Inuzuka Kiba," replied Naruto while focusing on his breakfast. "It will be fun to watch," said Sasuke. "I prefer watching him demolish someone else than being demolished." "It wasn't that bad," said Itachi. "You are even and it's hard to tell which one of you is better." Sasuke only nodded and finished his meal. When he did that, he walked outside and waited for Naruto, who grabbed his bag and walked after Sasuke. Excluding color of their hair and eyes, it was almost impossible to tell them apart. When Naruto finished, he joined Sasuke outside and they calmly walked out of the mansion and through the district, heading towards the academy. When they crossed the line that was a border between the district and the village, looks and glances sent at them changed, especially one sent towards Naruto, but nobody seemed to do anything too rash, as they knew it could end badly, especially when done in bright light and with so many witnesses, when they were walking like such and completely ignoring others, as they were chatting with each other. Once they entered the academy, they headed for their classroom. ignoring all stares and looks sent at them, and walked into their classroom, which still was empty. They took seats at the end of top row, doing nothing and trying to kill their time. It was boring few minutes as they waited for other people to arrive. While they were doing that, Naruto took out their textbook and skimmed it, seeing what would be today's topic. When he saw it, he yawned out of boredom. He expected something more useful or interesting. Shikamaru entered the classroom, and the moment he did that, he stopped in his tracks when his eyes landed on two people sitting by the window and wearing clothes with Uchiha crest. One of them had bright yellow hair, and when Shikamaru saw that, his eyes widened in realization and shock. He didn't expect to see Naruto sitting together with Sasuke and not killing each other, much less him being a member of Uchiha. He blinked a few times just to make sure he was seeing things right. He walked to his seat and watched the entrance to the room as he was trying to predict people's reaction upon seeing Naruto. However, he also took a closer look at the Naruto and noticed on his wrist bracelet with rather interesting symbols that ring some bells in his head. Like he knew those symbols from somewhere, yet he couldn't remember from where. He knew they were important, but he didn't know why, and it annoyed him a lot as he was supposed to be a Nara and they were supposed to know everything. Next to enter was Sakura. When she entered the classroom, she stopped and noticed who was sitting beside Sasuke. When she did that, on her forehead appeared vein and she marched towards him. For her, he didn't deserve to be an Uchiha. He was a baka and knucklehead, not an actual ninja, so he should be not sitting there. Certainly not in those clothes with Uchiha fan on them. "It seems that one of your fangirls is coming here," cheerfully said Naruto when he saw Sakura. "HN," replied Sasuke, and it meant, "Yes, you are right. It will be fun," said Naruto, and in his eyes appeared Sharingan, glowing menacingly as he was taught by Itachi to do when attempting to scare someone. They usually worked really well when trying to unsettle the enemy. It caused an Uchiha to look like a monster, not a human, especially at night when only his glowing eyes were visible, while rest of his body was being hidden by shadows and darkness. Sakura walked forward and towards Naruto. He was going to pay for getting those Sharingan and getting into Uchiha clan. He didn't deserve anything. He should beg for everything that he was receiving. Yet here he sat with those fancy swords on his back and with Sharingan and looked like a prince. "You baka!" yelled Sakura, finally getting attention of Naruto. "How do you dare to steal Sharingan?" She tried to punch Naruto, but when her punch connected with his body, it turned into a flock of crows that scattered across the room and after a moment converged behind his chair, meanwhile scaring everybody else in the room that wasn't used to such genjutsu. Sasuke looked at those crows with mild interest. He saw them a couple of times when they were sparring Itachi and they looked dangerous. Per se, they weren't dangerous, but when combined with proper attacks, they were extremely dangerous. Sakura jumped away in fear from Naruto, as she didn't expect such turn of events, and looked at Naruto, who seemed to ignore her and went back to sitting in his seat and was somewhat asleep, at least guessing by his head resting on his arms. "Are you ignoring me?" yelled Sakura, veins on her forehead bulging out and ready to burst open. "Yes, he is," said Sasuke, noticing Naruto was ignoring her. Sasuke learned how to somehow read Naruto, but it still was a hard thing to do for him. Leave him alone. At least he had more luck with that than rest of people. Only Itachi had more luck with reading Naruto. Sakura became somewhat subdued when she heard what Sasuke told her, and she nodded, although she was still sore and angry. Rest of people entered the room and soon the class started, while Naruto was happily trying to take a nap. "Naruto, wake up!" yelled Irika and threw a piece of chalk at Naruto, whose eyes snapped open and flashed red, while he caught that piece of chalk with one hand. "Which chakra nature is weak against Katan?" "It's easy," said Naruto, yawning and annoying Irika futon. "You're correct," weakly said Irika, shocked that Naruto knew about chakra natures. Before a few weeks ago, he was a complete knucklehead, and now he knew the things even moments after woken up, which was a weird thing for him to do, but he guessed that being adopted into Uchiha clan had some positive effects on him, and the fact that his appearance changed, sure it had. Naruto after that went back to taking a nap, or at least he seemed to be taking one. He watched with mild interest as Irika was explaining chakra natures and how they influenced each other. Naruto focused on them, the moment Irika touched upon Kekkei Genkai. Kekkei Genkai are rare bloodlines that give certain powers to some ninja clans or families. Started Irika, getting attention of everybody in the room, as a Kekkei Genkai were an interesting topic and one that always was getting attention of everybody. They can be divided into two groups, one which allows person to mix two basic elements of chakra to create new one. For example, Doton and Suiton will create Mokuton, or Raiton and Suiton will make Ranton. There are also other types of Kekkei Genkai, ones that can be divided into another two groups. One are Dojitsu and second are the rest. Dojitsu are Byakugan of Hyuga clan and Sharingan of Uchiha clan. Second group of them are ones connected with special abilities, for example control over the bugs of Aburame clan or control over the shadow of Nara clan. They can't be learned by the people from the outside of respective clan, and they are closely guarded secret of each clan. For the next week, I want you to write 5 pages on chosen Kekkei Genkai, advantages, disadvantages of it, and how you can use them during the battle. After the break, we will have practical training. They nodded and scattered to quietly ate their lunches, and Shikamaru went after Naruto. "Who are you?" asked Shikamaru when he was close to Naruto. "Those things on your bracelet seem familiar, yet I can't locate from where I know them." "Maybe because they are visible in our Hittite?" suggested Naruto, pointing at the Hittite of random shinobi that passed through the street in front of them. "I guess you are right," said Shikamaru, although he wasn't convinced by it, which worried Naruto a little as he didn't want to talk about who his father was. And he knew that if Nara wanted answers he would get them. Also this little fact that Shikaka would know, and even if he didn't know, he would guess the moment he saw Naruto in those clothes and with that armband. "Good," said Naruto, "let's head back as it seems it's start of taijutsu training." "It will be troublesome," said Shikamaru and added way quieter. "He is hiding something from me. Don't know what and why, but he does that." Naruto heard those words, but he let them slip as he knew that if he would react to them, it would raise even more suspicions and caused even more questions. And as Itachi said, Nara that is searching for an answer is the worst type of Nara. So for his own sake he shouldn't give Shikamaru information that could cause further questions, which would be a troublesome, as Nara liked to say. They walked back to their classroom, and instead of tiers of seats that were previously, now it was covered in training mats, and seats were removed, thanks to some seals that were placed in the walls of the room. In the middle of the room was made space for sparring. This training would be in form of 1 versus 1 fights. Students with similar prowess in taijutsu would be paired together. Boys with boys and girls with girls. Later they would fight without caring for gender, but that would be during 3rd and 4th year of the academy. Rules are clear. Announced Irika, only taijutsu, no ninjutsu, clan fighting styles are allowed. First fight will be between Inuzuka Kiba and Uchiha Naruto. Naruto gave harness with his swords to Sasuke, walked to the middle of the room and looked at Kiba, who looked like your typical young and loud Inuzuka. Everybody believed that he was better than Naruto and that he should easily beat Naruto. Only Sasuke leaned back and looked at what was going to happen, wondering how much time it would take for Naruto to send Kiba into the hospital. He knew that his brother was strong, but didn't know how strong compared to other academy students. It seemed that Akamaru sensed what was going to happen and decided not to sit on Kiba's head as he usually did, and instead jumped into the lap of Ino, much to her surprise. "It seems that your Ninken knows what will happen," teased him Naruto, shocked by the behavior of Akamaru, but he wasn't going to let it pass by. It was too good of an occasion to mess with Kiba. "I won't need Akamaru to beat you," replied Kiba. "I'm much better than you." After those words he charged at Naruto, who evaded his charge and looked at him with some amusement visible in his cerulean blue eyes. "You don't seem to be that much better, Kiba-chan," teased him Naruto and waited for another attack. This one was designed to make him forget about common sense and logic, instead to force him to fight without any plan or logic. Such people were easier to beat, way easier in fact. "Tisk," said Kiba with some annoyance. "You were just lucky." After those words Kiba charged at Naruto, who snorted in amusement. He looked at Kiba with look that could be translated, "Are you really that stupid?" This time Naruto decided to end it quickly and without too much of the show. His eyes morphed into red and black of the Sharingan, which caused a lot of shocked looks. Kiba was unfazed by them and continued his attack at Naruto. When Naruto saw that Kiba won't stop, he brought his left hand to block incoming strike and used his second hand to deliver punch to Kiba gut, which didn't knock him out, only shocked him and everybody in the audience as they didn't expect to see that. Only one that wasn't shocked was Sasuke. As he knew what was going to happen, it was one of typical katas of Interceptor Fist, and it was often used in such situations. It wasn't dangerous, but it could quickly evolve into much more dangerous set of katas. Did you say anything about being lucky? Asked Naruto, unsettling him even more. There was something in him that said danger, and many looked at him in wonder what was going on. Before his disappearance, he wasn't so calm and was a dead last. Here he was calm and collected. Also, there were signs of typical Uchiha arrogance, not to mention that his knowledge and abilities level skyrocketed. Yes, you were just lucky, shouted Kiba and once again charged at Naruto, causing him to sigh dramatically. It was becoming boring. Naruto waited for good opportunity for the attack, and when it came, he sent powerful kick aimed at the chest of Kiba, which sent him back and he landed on the ground a little dazed, and it was obvious that he lost this fight. Winner is Uchiha Naruto, said Iruka and nodded in direction of Naruto, making sure to pair him with someone stronger during their next taijutsu training, probably Chuji or Sasuke. I thought you were going to beat him faster, said Sasuke, handing Naruto harness with his swords. I wanted to have some fun and let him fight, replied Naruto, pulling out of the harness one of his sabers and looking at it under the light. They were glowing gold when he was doing so and were drawing everybody's attention, as such blades were rare, and usually they were handed inside of the clan. Receiving one of such rare blades was a great honor for one that was receiving it, and it was also a sign of trust placed onto him by one that gave it to him. Shikamaru looked at those swords that Naruto had, as they seemed somewhat familiar, and they looked like he should really know them from somewhere, and there was a strange sensation in the back of his mind telling him that he knew them, or at least he heard about them. Those neon yellow hair and those blue eyes seemed to be somewhat connected. He didn't know how or why, but they were connected with those sabers. This will be the last fight of the day, announced Iruka, Uchiha Sasuke versus Akimichi Chuji. Sasuke walked to the middle of the field and looked at Chuji with some interest, thinking how to beat him. He was an Akimichi, which meant a lot of strong punches, but he was slow and not really agile, which was perfect for him as he was faster one, and one that was fighting using the style designed around dodging and evading strikes. Sasuke estimated the size of the field, trying to assess what he had in terms of field to play. He didn't have a lot of it, which meant that he would need to be extremely careful with his moves, as such punch could send him onto the ground or knock out easily in a matter of seconds. And that left him only with one option that would work, that is Sharingan, and using something that Aniki showed him with Genjutsu placed by it. They were not going to be as strong as ones placed by mature one, but for this case they were enough. What is he doing? Asked Shikamaru, when he saw that Sasuke was methodically and slowly attacking Chuji, while not being hit back. Ocular Genjutsu, explained Naruto, whose eyes were blazing red and were looking at Sasuke. He knew that in head-on fight he doesn't stand a chance, so he decided to use Genjutsu to hide himself behind it and strike from the cover of it. So that's why Chuji doesn't know what's going on, said Shikamaru. Yes, replied Naruto, when he sees right hook. In reality Sasuke is preparing to kick him, and so on. It's hard thing to fully master, as one good hit and it breaks. Also fully matured Sharingan helps with it. Interesting thing, said Shikamaru, and Naruto nodded in agreement and went back to watching the spar as it unfolded in front of him. Sasuke managed to land a couple of good punches at Chuji and forced him to forfeit. Winner is Uchiha Sasuke, announced Iruka when he saw that the fight was over and Chuji forfeited, which honestly speaking was the best thing to do for him. He didn't have a chance to win against Sasuke, so he retreated unbeaten. Rest of the day has quickly passed for throwing practice, which was a little boring, at least in Naruto and Sasuke opinion, as they were used to throwing at much smaller further set targets. So scoring a bullseye wasn't a hard thing to do for them, and they were almost constantly doing that. Sasuke was doing that. Naruto was hitting close to the middle of target, but he wasn't constantly hitting bullseye as was Sasuke. When they finished it, they were met by Itachi, who officially was there to pick them up, but in reality he had other reasons for his presence there. To pay a visit to the headmaster. Flashback. Uchiha Itachi knew that the academy was going to manipulate grades received by Naruto, so he decided to pay them a visit and politely remind them that such thing would have unpleasant consequences for ones responsible for it. It was the main reason why he decided to pay them a visit before he was going to pick up his younger brothers. If he wanted to, he could be an intimidating figure, and as such he was a perfect person to speak with them, of course politely, without mentioning what would happen to them if they were going to fail to comply with those humble requests. He walked through the halls of the academy, heading towards the administrative part of it, and while he was walking through it, he could easily see rapidly paling teachers and instructors. It looked like they were hiding something from him, and they didn't like him poking around the place. Seems that I will need to be more forceful in what I'm going to do, thought Itachi while watching reaction of people around them. He was an ANBU and as such he needed to be able to read their emotions or what they were thinking. Here he was seeing that they guessed the reason why he was here and wanted him as far from it as possible. He walked to the headmaster office and gently knocked, waiting for the signal to enter. When heard it, he slid doors open and walked inside. Headmaster paled a little when he saw who was standing in front of him. It was Uchiha Itachi, son of Uchiha Fugaku and current heir to Uchiha clan. Not to mention that he was an ANBU captain. "How may I help you, Uchiha-sama?" he politely asked. Yet it was obvious that it was a wonder that he didn't stutter and managed to say a coherent sentence. "Takashi-san," said Itachi, sitting in the chair opposing desk of Takashi. "It came to my attention that you aren't treating one of my brothers fairly. May you clarify it a little?" asked Takashi, not sure if he understood it right. "I mean Uchiha Naruto," calmly said Itachi. "I was training him a little during last 3 weeks and he seemed to be a bright and intelligent student. Yet his reports are suggesting he is the worst student of his class. Which meant either he wasn't paying any attention or someone was sabotaging him." "I'm not sure if I'm understanding what you said correctly," said Takashi. "You said that he was being taught wrong?" "Yes, I mean that," said Itachi. This Chunin was getting onto his nerves and it was a bad sign for him. "I can't believe that. I try to ensure that everybody is treated equally." "It seems you can't accomplish that," said Itachi. "I will be watching, and if I will see that he is being taught wrong or in other way sabotaged, I will be less than polite." "Of course, Uchiha-sama," said Takashi with a low bow. Itachi only nodded and left the room, walking to the ground in front of the academy. He stood in the shadows of large tree growing there and waiting for those he was supposed to pick up. Standing there, he was able to see them walking towards him. End of the flashback. "Itachi and I," said Naruto and Sasuke when they saw their older brother waiting for them. He looked somewhat happy, although reading his face was even a challenge for them. He was currently wearing beige shorts, black wide-collar t-shirt, and on his forehead was visible his Hitai-8. He was also carrying full set of his ninja tools. "Hey Runts," cheerfully said Itachi. "How was it?" "Boring," replied Sasuke. "Maybe for you," said Naruto. Beating Kiba in a taijutsu spar was a fun thing to do. "It seems that your training is paying off," said Itachi. "Yes," agreed Naruto and looked in some amusement as people looked in their direction with some respect. They seemed to ignore him and Sasuke, and instead were focused on Itachi. "And we need to write 5 pages on chosen Kekkei Genkai." "Which one are you going to write about?" asked Itachi. "Probably Uzumaki one. Probably 3/4 of class will write about Sharingan," said Naruto. "Uzumaki one?" asked Sasuke with raised eyebrow. "Chakra chains," explained Itachi. "It might be a good idea to test you, if you can manifest them. They could be rather useful thing to have. What about you, Sasuke?" "Sharingan," simply replied Sasuke, and Itachi nodded. It would be a very, very easy thing for him to write about. After all, he was one from the Uchiha clan and wielder of it. "You know it is boring?" asked him Naruto. "HN only," replied Sasuke, which could be translated either as "yes, I know," or as "no, it isn't boring." Shikamaru's suspicions weren't letting him focus on anything. They were constantly nagging him about those sabers and their connection with those cerulean blue eyes and blonde, almost yellow hair. Like they were more connected that they looked to be connected with each other. It looked like he was missing something obvious. "Two-san, can we speak?" Shikamaru asked his father, Shikaku, who was Jonin commander of the Konohagakure and second in command of whole ninja forces of it. He was one of the closest advisors to current Hokage and was a friend of previous one. They were sitting on the porch surrounding inner garden of Nara compound and were playing shogi, which was usual pastime activity for all Nara to do. "Of course, Shika," said Shikaku and looked at Shikamaru, noticing troubles and worries visible in his body posture, or more probably troubles with finding an answer, which was a typical thing for all Nara to have. "What do you need?" "Naruto got some swords and they look like I should know them, yet I don't know," said Shikamaru, and Shikaku eyes narrowed. Those could be only one set of blades. Considering that he was adopted into the Uchiha clan, it made sense that he was given them. Not many swords could be given to him. They glowed gold when light hit them, added after a moment Shikamaru. and he has this bracelet with weird wolf head and spiral. Shikaku stroked his beard wondering if things he was hearing were right. If they were right, Naruto got those two sabers and was told about his parentage. It was almost certain that Fugaku told him about Minato, probably didn't mention Kyuubi, as he wouldn't be ready yet. Probably not anytime soon. Wolf head you say, said Shikaku, gears in his head slowly turning. They were starting to get faster and faster as he was thinking about it. Wolf was a sign of only a Namikaze clan, spiral could only mean Uzumaki. Yes, Two-san, said Shikamaru, knowing well that he was asking the right questions to the right person. I know the meaning behind those symbols, said Shikaku, choosing the words extremely carefully. Yet, I can't reveal them due to security reasons. I won't discourage you from looking for answers to your questions, but in this case you need to be careful and do not talk openly about what you have found. If you will find anything, confront me or Naruto in private. He can get killed if it will get openly known. It will be troublesome, said Shikamaru and nodded. They finished the game and he walked towards library that was inside of the compound as he knew that it was one of the best sources of data about famous shinobi and fighting styles. So digging there would provide plenty of interesting results and one that could be rather enlightening. What is so important that you requested this meeting? Asked Mitokado Hamura, looking at the headmaster of the academy, standing in front of civilian council. They somehow omitted Shinobi Council and didn't invite it for this meeting. Uchiha Itachi made rather pointed threats about what is going to happen if I won't be sabotaging that demon brat, said Pale Takashi. I see, said Udatane Koharu. Thank you for that report. You are dismissed. He waited for the Chunin to disappear from the room before looking at the rest of council. We need to do something or situation will completely slip out of our control. Also, that demon shouldn't be allowed to live any longer. Udatane-sama, what about using our guards to kidnap Naruto? Suggested Haruno Mabuki. That might work, excellent suggestion Haruno-san, said Koharu. This meeting continued for several more minutes until they reached agreement upon several points. This academy is so boring, groaned Naruto when he was reading about Kekkei Genkai that he could have, called Kongo Fusa ceiling chains. It was supposed to be one of the most powerful Kekkei Genkai ever known and was able to tame full Bijou without too much of a struggle. I agree, added Sasuke, who was sparring with Itachi in Taijutsu and trying to hit him, which so far wasn't happening at all. There is also earlier graduation, said Itachi, while blocking punch from Sasuke. Inside of his headgears were slowly turning. He knew that in terms of ninja arts they were more than ready to graduate. Problem was with the mental side of things. He knew about darker sides of the ninja life and he didn't want them to see it so soon. Officially it isn't there, but if you show enough of prowess in ninja arts and are ready to graduate, you can do so. I don't think you will be able to graduate this year, but the next one is the possibility. HN, said Naruto and looked at Sasuke, who was getting thrown onto the tatami mats that were covering the floor. He was trying to understand this Kongo Fusa and he was supposed to be able to shape his chakra into a chain and manifest it outside his own body. It seemed that he was missing something as he was able to force chakra into such shape, yet he wasn't able to get them out of his body, which was a strange thing. Don't be so annoyed, said Itachi, while trying to keep Sasuke away from hitting him. I graduated early as it was the middle of war and we needed everybody we could get. Now we finally have some peace, so graduation age was set higher and you learn at slower pace. Really? Asked Sasuke, trying to kick Itachi. From his point of view, appearance of Naruto in Uchiha clan so far had only advantages, huge ones, as Itachi was spending more time helping them with training or outright training. Also, he had someone that could spar with him on somewhat even terms. Yes, said Itachi, grabbing outstretched leg of Sasuke and throwing him onto the mat with surprised yelp from younger Uchiha. Those were dark times, and you should be happy that you don't need to live through them. I guess you are right, said Naruto and focused on his palm. Something said in his mind it was going to work. He raised it and pointed in direction he knew he wouldn't hit anything too precious, assuming it was going to work. When he did that, from his hand erupted golden chain that surged forward and pierced through the wall of the dojo and embedded its sharpened point in the wall of the mansion, passing through the corridor outside of dojo. That was unexpected, said Itachi, looking at the amount of damage caused by Naruto. I hope that you know how to retract those chains or it will be a problem. I think I know how to do that, said Naruto, yanking back the chain and returned to his hand, and it hid there. At least that problem is solved. I think that the next time we are going outside to do that training, sighed Itachi. I don't think that repairing dojo after each session will be a good idea. I guess so, said Naruto, scratching back of his head sheepishly. Sorry for that destruction. I didn't expect it to be so powerful. It happens, said Itachi. Don't even get me started on what Sasuke did when he started learning futon. He remembered well those days, and in the forest there were still visible scars caused by his training. What did he do? Asked Naruto. Ask him, not me, said Itachi, who was still fighting with Sasuke. How is going on your chakra control? Quite good, said Naruto. I'm able to run up and down the tree without too much of a trouble. That's better than quite good, said Itachi with thin smile on his face. It looked like Kagebunshin was helping a lot with training. Shikamaru was sitting in the library of Nara clan. They had one of the best libraries in the village, and most of it was focused on famous clans and shinobi. How to recognize them, how to fight them, and how not to fight them. He was looking for any references to those things he saw on Naruto bracelet, as he knew they were important, or at least something in his mind told him so. He opened one of many scrolls about clans of Konohagakure, blew the dust of it, and looked at the list of clans. His gaze swept carefully over every single name and was looking for ones that weren't that well known, were currently extinct, had powerful Kekkei Genkai that could suggest unhealthy interest from spies and assassins from other villages. His gaze swept over two names he didn't spot in previous books he checked, Namikaze and Uzumaki. That piqued Shikamaru's suspicions, and he opened it on the spot, focused on them, and what he saw got his attention. According to what he read, they were descendants of Uchiha Barui and Senju Naomi, but that was rather boring compared to what else was about the clan. If he was seeing things right, they were able to manifest both Mokuton and Sharingan, which was an extremely rare thing to have. On their own they were rare, but together it was almost impossible. Yet that wasn't the only thing that shocked him about it. Crest of this clan was also interesting. It was a pitch-black head of a wolf, and that was one of symbols that were visible in that armband, which made him wonder more about Naruto, as so far everything seemed to point into direction of him being a Namikaze. Question was, who was his father? Last well-known one was Namikaze Minato, Yondaime Hokage, and Konoha no Kiroi Senko, who looked almost the same as Naruto. Remove those birthmarks and you would have Minato. With those longer hairs, Naruto was looking even more and more like Yondaime Hokage, and that caused even more questions to appear inside of Shikamaru's mind. On a piece of parchment he made a note about him and looked at the Uzumaki clan, which was second that interested him. According to what he was able to read, they were royal family of the Uzushigakure, village that was destroyed right after Second Great War, and their crest was a spiral. What was previous name used by Naruto? Loudly wondered Shikamaru, until it hit him. It was Uzumaki, so it meant that he was connected with both of those clans. Question was, through whom? According to those scrolls, there could be only one such pair, Uzumaki Kushina and Namikaze Minato, which would make him a prince of Konoha. Assuming this theory was right, he was descendant of the line of Uzushikage, Uchiha Madara, and Senju Hashirama. In Ninja World heritage was an important thing. Probably it was second the most important thing, right behind abilities of a person. Night was peaceful inside of Uchiha district. Everybody was sleeping or preparing for sleep, and not many people were on the streets. If they were there, they would have seen something that would intrigue them. From the rest of the village into the Uchiha compound and over the wall bordering it jumped inside 8 people dressed in black. It was obvious that they were ninja, yet question was who was their target and what they were doing here. Naruto was laying on his futon and soundly sleeping when something nagged his senses, telling him to wake up. He slowly opened his eyes and looked around. He felt a wave of bad emotions coming towards him, and he knew they had hostile intentions as he learned how to distinguish between those emotions. He silently gripped hilt of saber that was laying closely to his hand and hid it under covers, waiting for whatever was supposed to happen. There was a sound of breaking walls and snapping wood, followed by a shower of splinters that rained onto everything inside of his room. Through that hole jumped in 8 people completely dressed in black. Naruto was faking his sleep and waited for them to get closer to him. 2 of them walked towards him to grab him, and for one of them it was the end of his life. Working purely on his instincts, Naruto's eyes snapped open. He assessed situation in a splinter of a second, and saber that he had hidden under covers was embedded in the stomach of one that was closest to him. resulting in a scream of shock and pain from him, as they didn't expect that kind of a resistance. They expected that they would be able to simply knock out their target and get out of the building with him. Not to mention huge stream of blood erupted from the wound, covering everything around in blood. Naruto jumped away from those people. He was running only on the adrenaline and instincts. He knew he didn't stand a chance against remaining 7 people, so he looked for any possible exits. He could try to get out of the room through that hole they made, or through the doors that were behind him. He chose doors behind him. He quickly opened them, ran onto the corridor and waited. It looked like Itachi also noticed what was happening or heard it as he ran out of his room, his ninjato in hand and Sharingan blazing in his eyes. He was going to ask Naruto what happened when out of Naruto's room rushed out 7 shinobi dressed in black. They didn't have a lot of time to react as Itachi crashed into first 2 of them, hitting them in the crotch or solar plexus and effectively knocking them out. He knew they were hostile as they didn't look like Uchiha, and Naruto was running away from them. Soon Itachi was joined by Fugaku and Mikoto, with whom he quickly dealt with remaining guests, which after few moments were laying on the ground, knocked out and with their hands tied behind their backs. "What was that noise?" asked woken up Sasuke. When he looked out of his room, words stopped in his mouth. When he saw people laying on the ground, tied like Christmas gifts, and everybody else looking over them with disgust. Itachi opened doors into Naruto's room and looked inside. He immediately noticed 8th assassin. This one was laying in pool of his own blood with saber lodged in his stomach. There was also a gaping hole in the wall of the room, suggesting how they got inside. "It seems that this one is dead," said Itachi, as he moved to one with saber in his stomach. "It looks like they got through that wall. They tried to catch Naruto, who was able to surprise them, killing one of them, and he managed to escape." "I killed him?" weakly asked Naruto, before his knees buckled under him and he vomited onto the floor, which honestly speaking didn't shock Itachi at all, as that was typical reaction after just having a first kill. Yet he didn't expect him to be forced to kill someone so quickly. Killing was a part of ninja life, but genin were forced to kill. "Yes, you did so," said Mikoto in soothing voice, while looking at Fugaku and Itachi to deal with those on the ground. "You did that in self-defense and you did the right thing. I know it feel wrong, but it will eventually get easier, but it can't get too easy. You need to find a reason for what you did." While Mikoto was taking care of Naruto and calming him down, Itachi looked over whole scene and thought who would be brave or stupid enough to break into mansion that was in the middle of whole district. "We better tie them and dump them into T&I, along with killed one," said Fugaku, looking at Itachi, who kneeled in front of one killed by Naruto and took out of the wound saber that was embedded in stomach of dead shinobi. When he pulled it out, there was unpleasant sucking noise as he did so. "Yeah," agreed Itachi, and made one of the most famous seals, one used for the Kage Bunshin. When he did so, near him appeared 8 copies of him, which grabbed those bodies and disappeared out of the room with them. Well, one room is destroyed and there is giant hole in the wall. Also, I think that those idiots will try to attack him once again or even more times. "If you don't mind it, you will need to share a bedroom with him," said Fugaku. "We both know that first kill is a hard thing and those idiots will try at least once again to do the same thing." "Yeah," agreed Itachi, remembering well how hard it was for him. At least it was better that Naruto killed in self-defense. Mind for some unknown reason was taking that somewhat better. It will take him some time to get over it. Tomorrow he will be emotional wreck. "So you won't have any problems with that?" asked Fugaku. "No," said Itachi, "it will be a minor inconvenience, but we will deal with this. Also, I don't think they will dare to do the same thing with me being in the same room. There should be a spare bed or futon in one of storage rooms," said Fugaku, and Itachi nodded. It would be going to be a hard time for Naruto, but not only for him. Everybody would be affected by it, but only in bigger or slower degree. Naruto didn't remember rest of the night or what happened after that kill, so he was a little shocked when he woke up not in his room, but in the one that was looking familiar and feeling familiar, yet wasn't his. He looked around and noticed that on the walls there were several posters and photos. In one corner were armor stands, one with matte gray armor that looked quite light, as it was only breastplate, arm guards, and shin guards. However, next to it stood second armor stand with black and red plate armor with fur collar. There was also a weapon stand there with multiple kunai, shuriken, and few swords placed there. Naruto looked to his left and saw Itachi sitting there with crossed legs and looking at him. Morning, said Itachi, smiling a little, when he saw that Naruto was awake. He was shocked that Naruto was able to sleep so peacefully and for so long. When he was dealing with his first kill, he was haunted by nightmares and had troubles with sleeping for days. Where am I? Asked Naruto, still visibly sleepy and tired. In my room, replied Itachi. After yesterday night we decided you will be safer here. Yesterday night? Asked Naruto until that wave of memories hit him like a ram. He became nauseous and paled. Yes, said Itachi, you just killed someone for the first time. It isn't nice but is part of our job, and in this case it was in self-defense. It will never become painless, but it will get easier and it won't hit you like a hammer, but it can't become too easy. Naruto paled a lot more, but after a moment he gained back his control over his body and mind. He was still pale and it was obvious he was in distraught, but he was at least looking somewhat better than moments before. Drink this, said Itachi, handing small cup to Naruto. It is quite a strong tea with some additions that will calm your stomach, and you won't be trying to puke every 5 minutes. Thanks, mumbled Naruto and drank it. It was a truly disgusting mixture as he winced when he gulped it down. It's disgusting. It isn't the best thing, but it works, only replied Itachi, since you are going to be sleeping in this room for the time being. Some rules. Do not touch 2 upper drawers in my desk. I have some of private things there. From books you can read anything you wish. I think that's all. Marino Ibiki walked into T&I and on the floor in front of him, he found 7 tied bodies that were trying to get away from his position and one with ugly wound in his stomach. He only raised his eyebrow when he saw them. It was one of ways of delivering them to T&I by ANBU, but there also should be some note about who dropped them off and why. He looked for it for the moment and there it was. It was a small note, but it was obvious that ANBU did that. Question was, what was the reason for them being delivered hers? Ibiki took the piece of paper that was stuck behind the collar of one of those guests. He straightened it and unfolded. Looks like I will be having fun today, he said, grinning like a madman once he read that piece of paper he received. They just did one of things that were punished rather harshly and he would get evidence to support for what they were being accused. Tori. Yes, sir? Asked ANBU with bird mask. Get me a Noichi here, said Ibiki, and throw this lot into holding cells. Hi, said Tori, grabbing tied prisoners and disappearing with them. If you won't think about it, said Itachi, noticing Naruto wincing and being quite sad. You won't be feeling the effects of it, trust me. I had the same problem. Do something to focus on it and forget about current thing. Train taijutsu or do your homework for the academy. It's the same thing as with a wound. You will irritate it and it will be causing you more pain and it will take longer to heal. Naruto only nodded. He didn't feel particularly good and he tried to get over it, but simply couldn't. So he guessed that Itachi method was the best and considered it for the moment before agreeing with him. Taijutsu, suggested Naruto, and Itachi only nodded. Yamanaka Inoichi entered into the headquarters of T&I and looked around, wondering why he was summoned into it. Then he spotted Marino Ibiki and towards him he walked as he knew that this man was one with answers to his questions. Good that you are here, said Ibiki. 8 idiots tried to kidnap Naruto. 1 ended up dead, while rest is awaiting interrogation. From what I guessed looking at damage done to them, I would guess they got battered in taijutsu, so no mind damage. Any restrictions or can I rip their minds into pieces? Asked Inoichi, knowing well that it was a crucial question, at least from his point of view. If he could do whatever he wanted, answers would be in matter of minutes, but subjects would be insane or crazy. But if he was forced to play by the rules, he would need more time to do that, but those minds would working more or less. I want them sane, so that Hokage can punish them for what they did, said Ibiki, and Inoichi only nodded. He walked towards interrogation cells and looked at people kept inside or them, until his gaze landed on one that should be quite fruitful. He walked towards that cell, opened doors and entered it. When person that was inside of it saw who was walking towards him, he screamed in fear. After all, Yamanaka clan members were able to get every single secret out of person mind, excluding Jinchuriki, but that was completely different case because they had being that was quite helpful with dealing with unwanted guests. Inoichi placed his hand on top of head of that ninja and entered his mind. He landed in blank-looking foyer and looked around. He ordered memories to appear and only multiple tiers of barriers appeared. He sighed and focused on them, trying to tear them apart, without too much collateral damage to the rest of that mind. Barriers were a rather annoying thing to deal with and they could take a lot of time to break through, but that depended on the abilities of Yamanaka and how well trained was one that tried to protect his mind. If he was good, he would be able to resist for a long time. But in this case they weren't good. There was only a whole lot of them and it took some time for Inoichi to break through all of them, and when he did that he was swarmed in memories, which could drive mad anybody that wasn't careful as there were simply too many of them. They could be watched only with utmost care and one at the time. Inoichi looked around the streams of memories looking for pieces of data that were important for him. Anything related to that night and about orders they received to do so. When he found interesting piece of data, or something that caught his attention, Inoichi stopped there and watched the memory. Memory. Inoichi landed in the room, which he immediately recognized as council chamber. But this time there were only members of civilian council and some shinobi, one of which was currently interrogated. He looked around trying to memorize faces, so that they could be later used to accuse them and arrest them. But for now he focused on listening to the conversation. "I want you to kidnap Demon Container and bring him to my house," said one of them. If Inoichi was right, it was either Koga, who was one of richer merchants, or Haruno Mabuki, who was mother of Sakura. If he was gonna guess, it sounded more feminine and screeching, which meant Mabuki. "What if we will be discovered?" asked one of those ninja. "Kill them all," said another counselor. "Nobody can see you." When Inoichi saw that memory, he knew he saw enough of it to be able to deal with it, and he pulled out of the memory. Memory end. When Inoichi left the mind of prisoner he was interrogating, prisoner immediately slumped and landed on the ground. It looked like it was too much for him to handle, which wasn't a huge surprise, as similar things usually happened during such interrogations. He thought that he saw everything he could see, yet some of those interrogations were surprising him. This one was one of such cases. He never expected those people to be so stupid, but well, that was them, ones that didn't know which end of kunai was pointy one. Naruto flew across the dojo from his attempt to block kick charging towards his chest. He thought that he was able to stop it without getting thrown across the room, yet he was so wrong. He crashed into the wall behind him, and after a moment he managed to raise. Thankfully this time he didn't make new entrance into the room. "What was that?" Naruto asked, looking at Itachi, who was the one responsible for sending him crashing into the wall. "Sorry for that, but sometimes I get carried away," said Itachi, trying to avoid murderous gaze of Naruto, which was sweeping over him from time and time. He looked quite scary when angry, especially with his Sharingan spinning madly and glowing menacingly. "Why it always happened to me?" Naruto asked nobody in particular, before launching once again at Itachi. "Because you asked me to spar with you," only replied Itachi and blocked punch from Naruto. "Calm down. How many times I told you to think what you do before doing that?" said Itachi as he grabbed extended hand of Naruto, who tried to punch him. "Way too many times," muttered Naruto and focused back on Itachi. "So you are saying that those idiots were ordered by civilian council?" asked Hibiki after Inoichi told him what he had found. It was just another usual day for TNI, nothing too exciting and nothing too boring. "Yes," sighed Inoichi, "but proving who were the people which ordered them is nearly impossible. There are no clear images of their faces, which means we can't use it to accuse them, and arresting and interrogating won't work. They're the council after all. Which basically means we have criminals running loose and we have no evidence to deal with them in normal ways. Next time those idiots might accidentally trigger Naruto to use Bijou Chakra, and we know what will happen then. I will speak with Hokage about more patrols of ANBU around Uchiha district, but many will complain about it," said Hibiki, and Inoichi nodded. "There is also Anko, and she might be able to get something out of them." "It's worth a shot," agreed Inoichi. "Nothing will hurt right now and something actually might help us. We both know that her ways of getting people to confess is highly effective." "Tusan is Naruto son of Namikaze Minato?" Shikamaru asked his father, while they were playing shogi and Shikaku was currently winning. When he heard those words his eyes widened and he looked at Shikamaru. He didn't think his son would be able to find those things so quickly. He was a Nara and had their genius level IQ, but still, he expected him to spend few more days searching for the things he needed. "Where did you find it?" quietly asked Shikaku, closely eyeing his son. "Our library," comparing things from many scrolls until I have found correct one. It took some time, but I found it, explained Shikamaru, and looking at that giant stone sculpture of previous Hokage helps. I wonder who else know about his parentage. You are correct, said Shikaku about second part of your question. I would say few Uchiha, Hyuga Hayashi, Inazuka Tsume, Hatake Kakashi, rest of Ino Shikacho, Sarutobi Asuma, Hokage-sama, and I think that's all. Probably Jiraiya-sama and Tsunade-sama know as well, or at least should. Do not mention it to anybody, even without knowledge about his parents made public. He has enough of enemies on his own. Fugaku was sitting in Hokage office with Hokage and leading interrogator, that is Ibiki Marino. On his face was calm facade, but inside he was fuming about multiple things and soon someone would feel his rage. Question was who, when and how strong it would be. Are you telling me that civilians decided to kidnap Naruto because he was getting out of their clutches? He half asked, half hissed, barely holding back his anger at civilian council as they as always were pain in certain part of human body. It seems so, said Ibiki, while trying not to enrage even further Uchiha that was sitting in front of him. We were unable to get their names, we have suspicions, but we both know that based on them we can't do anything. I see, said Fugaku, but it was obvious he was barely restraining his anger. I won't openly react to it, but be aware that my patience is short and I won't tolerate next such attempt. I understand your anger, said Hokage very carefully trying not to anger him even more. But with emotions we won't reach anything. We need to plan and do that carefully. At the moment we have a lot of time. Those shinobi will be kept infinitely in TNI and civilian council will only shout about them. They know that one more such attempt and they can give us all evidence we need to smash their plots. Fine. But I want 3 more squads of ANBU patrolling area around the district at all times, grumbled Fugaku, while in his mind he made a note to think about training Naruto even more. Actually, I was going to propose 4 squads, said Ibiki, 3 patrolling side of it facing the village and 4th one near the wall, so that I can also catch spies on my own as they seem to like to get through the district into Konoha. He noticed incoming storm and quickly added, I do not say you are traitors. I'm just saying that spies like to choose the path through the district. It seemed that I was unaware of those things, said Fugaku, but nodded in thanks. I think that's all and I have more pressing matters to attend to. After that kidnapping attempt, life quickly settled into somewhat normal, yet weird pattern and everybody lived like nothing at all happened. Naruto rather quickly got over his emotional issues and once again was his usual cheerful self, yet sometimes he had moments when he was guilty-stricken. But it was getting better as time was passing by. In terms of his ninja training, it was finally time for him to start learning some proper ninjutsu. Naruto was standing on the training ground behind the mansion and was looking at Itachi, who said that he was going to show him how to use first true Katan jutsu that were the pride of Uchiha clan, along with few basic Raitun ones. Katan chakra is one of the most dangerous types of chakra and can burn your throat and lungs if improperly handled. It is created in your lungs and channeled through your throat, where it takes desired shape. Too little chakra and it won't ignite. Too much and it will burn your throat, said Itachi looking at Naruto. You need to estimate how much you will need and use such amount of chakra to perform it. For example, Enden will require far less than Gokakyu and so on. That was the reason why I wanted you to work on your chakra control so that you wouldn't get burned by playing with fire or lightning. So you can choose 2 from following one's Gokakyu, Hozenka, Enden, Ryuka, and Shuiden. They're all C-rank Katan ninjutsu and almost everybody in Konoha knows at least 1 or 2 from this list. What about Gokakyu, Hozenka, and Ryuka? Asked Naruto, knowing well that he would need 2 of those to pass Uchiha rituals of becoming full clan member, which were during vernal equinox, which would be in next year as it was already after this year one. Uchiha were heavily connected with sun and fire as Katan jutsu had the greatest power when sun was in the sky, so they celebrated the moment when the days started to lengthen, which meant that vernal equinox and summer solstice were of the great importance and during them were one of the greatest Uchiha feasts. Other important feast was held in remembrance of pact signed between Uchiha Madara and Senju Hashirama, one that created Konohagakure no Sato and was the impulse to create other villages, but it was celebrated in the whole village. Why not? Said Itachi and looked at Naruto. As you probably already see, Gokakyu creates large ball made out of fire. Seals are as follows: tiger, ram, monkey, boar, horse, tiger. When done properly, it will create large fireball. somewhere between 20 and 30 feet. Few hours later, Itachi walked into one of Dango's shops, which were usual meeting place of his small group of friends. He walked towards them and slipped into his seat, where he slumped, which got attention of everybody there, as he was hard to tire and rarely showed how exhausted he was. "What happened?" asked Kakashi when he saw how Itachi looked. "Naruto happened," managed to say Itachi. "I thought that twins were bad, he is way worse." "Another wild chase all over the village?" asked Kurenai, getting Itachi attention. "I thought it was obvious he was adopted by my father into Uchiha clan," said Itachi. "I was training with him Katon manipulation and his Sharingan since he has fully evolved one, and I almost exhausted my chakra reserves." "You aren't the first that got tired out by Uzumaki," said Kakashi. "You forgot that I had same questionable pleasure. Since Kushina-sensei was wife of Yondaime and well, she had a lot of chakra." "What do you mean by that?" asked Kurenai. "Uzumaki have huge chakra reserves. Their average Chunin has more than our average Kage," explained Kakashi. "That's without any boosts to it in terms of bijou. Naruto is what? 8 or 9, give or take few months. So he might have as much chakra as High Jonin, maybe borderline Kage." "You are right," sighed Itachi. "He can go for, last time it was I believe 30 or 40 full power Gokaku and he is still able to fight. I wish luck Jonin that will be his sensei." When Itachi said that, even Anko managed to drop her dango and looked at him in shock, while Kakashi only nodded as it was something he was used to. He had seen enough of Uzumaki to know that it was something normal for them. "That's a lot," managed to say Asuma, a little shocked by such amount of chakra. "Give him few years to grow and get working relationship with Kyuubi," said Kakashi. "He will be a chakra powerhouse, huge one. But his academy records are obnoxious," said Kurenai. "Were obnoxious," corrected her Itachi. "It seems that small and pleasant talk with few people fixed them." "Itachi-kun," said Anko, getting his attention. "You were the one responsible for those 7 alive and 1 dead dropped in T&I in the middle of night?" "Alive, yes," admitted Itachi. "Dead one woke up wrong person and got saber into his stomach. It seems that they didn't learn that trying to kidnap Censor is a bad thing." "Censor?" asked Kurenai. "Who the hell is Censor there?" "Naruto," said Itachi, quietly and making sure that not many heard him. "He probably doesn't realize he is one, but he is rather good at it, and that was the case. He was surprised when asleep, and from what I guessed he did that purely on instincts." "Not bad," said Kakashi, while slowly sipping his sake. Itachi talked for few more minutes with his friends, and some of them were in the past his teammates, after he retreated into Uchiha district to get some sleep, as he needed to wake up early to be ready to go on a mission. First one in 6 or 7 weeks, as previous ones were spent on training his brothers, which he didn't consider so annoying now. It was the time for usual staff meeting at the academy to discuss progress made by students and how well they fared, but also to consider dropping few people out of it as they weren't suited for the life of shinobi or weren't meeting expectations and were failing their exams. This one was going to be rather interesting one, as there was an anomaly, for a lack of better word that would describe it. They all met in their usual meeting room, and all of them looked at data sheet about one person that up until recently was dead last, yet now was almost tied for top spot of his class, which was a really weird, no extremely weird situation, as it happened rarely, and none of those instructors remembered such situation in their lifetime. It seemed that something pushed him and gave him reason to train and learn, or maybe someone gently suggested to treat him fairly. It was mostly the second thing, but nobody was going to admit that, at least not yet. Threat that Itachi made and later one made by Hokage were rather pointed one, and nobody wanted to test his luck against those two people. Most of them remembered what Sandaime was able to do on the battlefield, and well, Itachi was just Itachi, son of Uchiha Fugaku and prodigy of his clan, not to mention one of the youngest ANBU captains. "Irika-san, it seems that your class is doing well," said one of instructors, looking over papers of class taught by Yumino Irika. He was the lucky or unlucky one to get 2 sons of Uchiha Fugaku and heirs of almost every single important clan in Konoha. Not to mention some important civilians, which meant that everybody was looking at his class and was checking results he was getting. "Yes," agreed Irika. "Naruto and Sasuke are competing for the first spot, and Sakura is competing with Hinata for top kunoichi. It seems that Naruto has changed during the year. He is more motivated and actually knows something which originally was a huge surprise for me. In Taijutsu he is almost as good as Sasuke, and it is hard to say which one of them is better. Most of their Taijutsu fights end with a draw. Academics-wise Sasuke is better than Naruto, but the gap is rather small. Overall last exam's results are interesting. Sasuke scored 97%, while Naruto 95, practical one was almost the same, but it was 98 and 97. I would say they are ready to graduate early, if they wish to do so. What about the rest of your class? Asked Headmaster, while on his own looking through data about them, and most of them were performing in a way he was expecting them to perform. Nothing too crazy and nothing too bad. Most of clan children are trying to catch up to those two and are faring rather well. Civilian ones are good, but it's obvious there is gap between them and clan ones. I would say 3 or 4 of them will drop out of the academy at the end of this year, said Irika, and Headmaster only nodded. Such thing was expected. So how is Naruto settling into Uchiha clan? Asked Hokage, looking at Uchiha Fugaku when they were sitting in Hokage's office discussing certain law, and it diverted onto topic of Naruto. Quite good, said Fugaku. He and Sasuke are at least civil towards each other, and he and Itachi liked each other. Which honestly speaking I'm no surprised about that. Especially since Itachi was the one that taught him our fighting style and some of ninjutsu. Good, said Hokage, while smoking his usual tobacco. It seems he is settling in nicely and council will let us live. They tried to say something about him being unworthy to be there, but they were silenced by me. Also other Uchiha are at least friendly towards him. Clan council knows who he is, but they keep that a secret as we don't want even more assassins after him. If you allow it, Itachi will go with Naruto, Sasuke and Shursui on an extended training trip, so that they are back once academy starts for another year, give or take few weeks. He said that he wants to train them without watching out for spies and troubles. There is also the thing that some things are better to be trained in private and with secrecy, said Fugaku. Since Itachi and Shursui are ANBU, I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be allowed to do that, said Hokage. I will give them another break from duty, and they will be allowed to train them outside of the village. Thank you, Hokage-sama, said Fugaku, nodding lightly and looking out of the window. He was wondering what was going to happen in the future, as it wasn't looking good. At least it was looking better than it was looking only days ago, and it seemed that everything was going well. Question was what civilian council was going to do, as they were known for their stupid decisions and ones that annoyed shinobi. Naruto dodged kick racing towards his head and rolled out of the way of one that followed it. When he did that he jumped back on his feet and looked at Sasuke, who was standing there in the opening stance of Interceptor Fist and was looking at him. They had friendly spar and were fighting each other to vent off frustration, but also to have some fun. You fight good, said Sasuke, grudgingly admitting that Naruto was good in their clan fighting style. You too, only replied Naruto and looked at Sasuke. Ready for round 2? Sasuke didn't respond and only charged at Naruto, who smiled when he saw what Sasuke was going to do. He brought his right hand to block the strike, and when he did that there was heard loud crash. Sound of bone crashing against bone, rather typical one in taijutsu. Naruto tried to kick Sasuke, only for him to stop the kick before it even truly started. That was also the time that allowed Naruto to look into Sharingan of Sasuke and notice change in it. Instead of Soul Tomo in one eye there were 2, and in second there were 3 Tomo and were spinning madly. Looks like you got lucky, said Naruto, jumping away from Sasuke. Check your Sharingan. What do you mean by that? Asked Sasuke, not fully understanding what Naruto meant. You unlocked 3rd level of it in one eye, replied Naruto, and Sasuke's eyes widened. He took out kunai from his holster and looked at it, to see image reflected on a surface of it. When he did that he was able to see his crimson red eyes. There it was. In right eye there were 3 Tomo, while in left one only 2, but still it counted. Thanks, said Sasuke, knowing well that it was forced to evolve thanks to those constant friendly spars with Itachi or Naruto or both of them. They were pushing him to his limits and forcing him to fight at his hardest, and that was the usual trigger for evolution of it. No problem, said Naruto, looking at him. Shall we continue? Why not? Was the only reply from Sasuke before he charged at Naruto, starting another round of fighting. On the next day, Naruto woke up early as it was a special day. End of school year and beginning of their training trip, where they were going to train outside of the village without prying eyes of civilians and shinobi alike following them wherever they went. Shursui was also dropping hints about showing them some things that normally weren't taught that early, yet were extremely useful to know and have. Naruto quickly showered and dressed in light clothes with some armor plates over his hands and legs to protect them and allow to use hands to block sword strikes aimed at them. On his back went both of his sabers and katana. They were kept there, that harness that Shursui gave him some time ago, and so far it looked good. Second katana for the time being got Sasuke, as there was no point in it laying in the corner and collecting only dust, when it could be used by someone to greater effect. When he got out of his room and walked to the dining room, he saw Itachi and Sasuke already there. Itachi wearing his Jonin vest, which was rather weird for him as he usually wore his ANBU armor or no armor at all, as he didn't like this bulky vest which limited his movements and it wasn't really suiting his fighting style, which was based on speed, agility and technical strikes, rather than strength and tanking blows coming his way. "Morning," said Itachi when he saw him. "Morning, Aniki," only replied Naruto, sitting at his usual place at the table and quickly eating his breakfast. "Eager to go on that training?" asked them Fugaku, who just entered and only received nods in response from them who were too busy eating to answer him. "I will be waiting for you with Shursui at the entrance of the academy," said Itachi, looking at Naruto and Sasuke. "Okay," said Naruto, finished what he was eating, grabbed his gear, walked out of the room and down the stairs. He was quickly joined by Sasuke, who was wearing similar gear, but only had one sword, instead of 3 that Naruto had on his back. When they arrived at the academy, they took their seats in the back of the room, where they were able to watch over the room and discreetly take a nap without getting attention. When Naruto received his sheet with questions, he raised his eyebrow at it and his Sharingan glowed for a moment, breaking through badly placed illusion. When he did that, he was finally able to see proper version of a test and he was able to solve it without any problems, or more correctly without any major problems. Next was first part of practical exam, that is throwing part of it, and for that they were taken outside of the academy, where would be also held last part of the exam. Taijutsu fights, and based upon those 3 factors they would receive final grade. Not passing one of those 3 didn't cause dropping out. Person needed not to pass 2 of them to be dropped out of the program. For throwing practice they were aligned in front of targets that were 30 feet away from them and on which was painted small bullseye, hitting which would grant more points. Average result was around 5 or 6 hits out of 10 tries, while heirs usually scored around 7 to 10. Naruto and Sasuke lazily scored 10 each and all of them hitting bullseye, which was a little shocking to other people there as they didn't expect such accuracy from those 2. They knew they were good, but not that good. After that part they walked to large ring filled with sand. It was typical place for taijutsu fights, and this time actually weapons were allowed to be used. Irika, knowing that Naruto or Sasuke were going to demolish anybody that was placed against them, decided to simplify things and set them against each other as he knew that wouldn't cause too much damage. Sasuke and Naruto walked onto the sand of the arena and looked at each other, their Sharingan slowly spinning and looking at each other, searching for any flaws in katas, holes in defense, or simply advantages that could be used. Naruto charged at Sasuke, who simply stood where he was and blocked punch that came his way. When he did that, he used his leg to try to kick Naruto, whose eyes widened in surprise when he saw what was going to happen. He managed to jump away, just barely avoiding the hit, and sighed in relief as that was way too close for his taste. He decided to be more careful with what he was doing and charged at Sasuke, this time watching carefully for any nasty traps or surprises that could be used by Sasuke against him. They were fighting on the flat ground and there weren't many things he could use against him, but there were still some things he could do. Sasuke punch almost connected with Naruto jaw when he disappeared into a flock of crows, scaring other people and only annoying Sasuke, who only needed moments to tear that genjutsu apart. When he did that, he was forced to roll out of the way of incoming shuriken and kunai thrown by Naruto at him. "Did you really think that genjutsu would do anything against me?" asked annoyed Sasuke, when he brought his own kunai to deflect those projectiles and was looking at Naruto with some curiosity. "It did what it was supposed to do," said smirking Naruto from behind Sasuke, and at the same time Sasuke heard unmistakable sound of shuriken that was getting close to him, and before he had a chance to react, wire attached to the shuriken circled few times around his body, which nicely tied him and threw him onto the ground. Also, it was double-layer genjutsu. "Ugh," said Sasuke, struggling against the wire that tied him. "Last time you didn't know how to do that. How did you learn it?" "Shursui was training it and he showed me how to do that," replied Naruto and loosened the wire, allowing Sasuke to get up and dust off his clothes from all that dust and sand that covered them. There was a reason why they were usually training Interceptor Fist inside of the building. It could get dirty if done outside, and when inside they could do that without watching out for people passing by. "It seems that Naruto has won," said Irika, once Sasuke freed himself out of the wire and was standing next to Naruto, who looked rather smug and happy. They walked towards the rest of the students, and before they could comfortably sit there, they felt someone's touching their shoulder. Both of them looked at the same time and saw Itachi standing there. "Good fight," said Itachi, who for last 10 minutes was watching them. "I don't think there is a reason for you to stay any longer. Let's go. Before dusk I would like to be at the Valley of End." "What are you doing?" shouted one of instructors, when he noticed what was going to happen. "You can't do that." "I can do that," said Itachi. "I'm, for your knowledge, one of Elite Jonins and ANBU captains. So I know what I can do and what I cannot, and this is something that I know I can do." "Of course, Itachi-sama," said that Chunin, who got a lot smaller under withering gaze of Itachi. That was one of more positive effects of having Sharingan. People rarely dared to look into the eyes of Uchiha. They knew they risked a lot by doing that, especially when Uchiha was annoyed with them or angry, and in such situations eye contact could be used to place genjutsu. "Itachi-sama?" asked Sasuke, not believing what he was hearing. "I can't believe that." "Believe it," only said Itachi. "I rarely use my position to get something done, but that was the case here." "Aniki, where are we going?" asked Naruto as they were running through the forests surrounding Konoha and towards north. "Valley of End," replied Itachi. "There is old Uchiha hideout there, and we will be safe there. Also, we will be able to train without too much of disturbances. Shursui left before we did, so we need to catch up to him." "How long we will need to get there?" Sasuke asked the most important question, at least from his and Naruto point of view. "Few hours only," replied Itachi, and kept running, while his eyes were scanning the surrounding for any troubles and enemies. "Unless we will have troubles along the way." "You honestly don't expect any troubles?" asked Naruto as they were leaping from branch to branch, with each passing minute getting closer and closer to Valley of End and at the same time further and further away from Konohagakure no Sato. "I don't expect them," said Itachi, "but it's never a bad idea to look for them." "So what are our plans for that trip?" asked Sasuke, his Sharingan spinning lazily and looking for threads. "Manjikyu Sharingan training for Naruto, Katan and Raiten Jutsu for both of you, Kenjutsu and general training," said Itachi as he leaped towards their target, which was a rather hard not to notice. Few hours later, when sun was hiding behind the horizon, they appeared on a high ridge overlooking the Valley of End and massive statues of Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara. Between them was majestic waterfall created during fight between them. It was here where the village took its final shape and a place of last fight between those two greatest shinobi of their time. Madara was slain during it and Senju Hashirama emerged as a winner of it. "It's magnificent," weakly said Naruto when he saw those sculptures and the waterfall between them. Sound of crashing water easily reaching them where they stood. They could see clouds of foam all over the waterfall as falling water was hitting one below. "It is," agreed Itachi, "but now we need to get down the slope and towards hideout which is placed there." They jumped down the slope, jumping from ledge to another and with each jump getting closer to the level of the lake below them, when they were only few meters above the surface of it. They felt moisture quickly covering their bodies and clothes. It was so humid here that it was almost visible. When they were on the shore of the lake below, Itachi led them towards small fissure running along the slope. They walked towards it, and when they were closer they were able to see that it was something more than a normal fissure. It looked like human-made thing, and when they entered it, they saw walls carved out of the bedrock with usage of Katan Jutsu. "That's it," said Itachi as he showed them entranced to it. "It was carved out of stone during Warring Clans period and was used by our clan to train or simply hide inside of it when they needed to rest after a fight. Not many know that, but it has second entrance that leads to the training field on the ground in the forest." "Cool," said Naruto as he walked forward and into the fissure. When they walked few meters into the slope of the canyon, they were able to see rectangular-shaped corridors and rooms there. On the walls were crude drawn symbols of Uchiha clan, along with torches slowly burning and providing necessary light. It took them a while to find a room where was Shursui, who arrived here before them and was currently training Taijusta katas, trying to correct any flaws that could be in them. "Aniki, what are we going to do?" asked Naruto when he was sitting with Itachi on the floor of one of smaller training rooms in that hideout. "Meditate," only replied Itachi, "and talk about something that was kept hidden from you until you are ready to use it." "What's that?" asked Naruto, excitement visible in his voice. "Kyuubi chakra," quietly said Itachi. "Your mother was a Jinchuriki of Kyuubi before you were, and when she went into labor, seal keeping him sealed in her weakened, and someone released Kyuubi moments after you were born. Your father managed to beat Kyuubi, but he was forced to seal him into you." When Naruto heard those words, he sobered a lot and looked at Itachi, wondering what to think about it and how he should react about it. For a moment he was angry at his father for doing what he did, but after a moment he calmed down and lightly nodded in understanding. Since the moment he started living with Uchiha clan, he was learning their customs and code of honor, and that thing was according to it. If you can't sacrifice your own things, do not ask anybody to do that for you. "It actually makes some sense, those names and attacks without a reason," said Naruto with small frown. "Blaming me for deaths from that October and so on. I'm angry at him for what he did, but he really didn't have any choice in that matter. I guess it will be a power like every other that I need to control." "No," said Itachi, "it will try to fight you for control, at least until you force him to work with you, but you have advantage over him. Sharingan, to be exact Manjikyu, as it can control him and thus convince to cooperation. I want you to start meditating, slow down your breath, clear your mind and calm down. When you do that, reach for second source of chakra, orange in color." Naruto slowly nodded and calmed himself down. He remembered calming techniques he learned, so he slowed down his breath and started removing one thought after another from inside of his mind, so that he could only focus on his chakra and flow of it. He seemed to be in such state for minutes, while inside of Naruto's mind it seemed like hours and days had passed. It took him some time to fully clear it from all of unimportant thoughts and clean it. When he was done with it, he focused on flow of his chakra. Naruto chakra had, to his big surprise, two sources: one his natural chakra core and second, way bigger than first, and that one was also amber/orange in color, and it seemed like it was also supplying chakra into his chakra system, not just being there. "I found it," said Naruto after his eyes snapped open. He looked at Itachi, who nodded. "Good," said Itachi, "now is the hard part. Making contact with guest in your body and befriending him." Naruto lightly nodded and once again closed his eyes. This time he pulled onto source of that orange chakra. When he did that, he noticed he fell into deep, dark and damp sever. He looked around, his eyes snapping into Sharingan form. He saw orange, or more properly red hue, coming from one direction, and he walked towards the source of that hue. When he got there, he saw a giant gate with bars set in it. Behind it, he saw a pair of large red eyes glowing menacingly. They were slitted, and in them was visible cunning and intelligence, but also ancient age of creature. "It seems that my jailer has decided to visit me," growled voice that sent chills down Naruto's spine. It was so full of malice, anger and hate that it was impossible to believe. Before Naruto could respond, there appeared two people. Itachi stood to Naruto's right, and in front of them appeared ghost of Namake's Minato, who looked at them in wonder, trying to remember what happened. Minato snapped his fingers and all of them, excluding Kyuubi, landed in more comfortable-looking room, without rambling and shouts coming from that overgrown furball. "Naruto, good to see you," said Minato and looked at Itachi. "Good to see you, too, Itachi-kun." "What are you doing here?" bluntly asked Itachi, not believing his own eyes. "You are supposed to be dead." "Yes and no," said Minato as he grimaced. "When I was dying, I transferred all of my remaining chakra into the seal, so that I could be an imprint and talk with you and Kyuubi. It seemed you grew up, Itachi-kun, and that you, Naruto, unlocked your Sharingan. How much time it was since that October?" "9," said Itachi. "I brought Naruto here so he could safely work with Kyuubi, but it seems that you have it covered." "Good to see you, Sochi," said Minato softly, looking at Naruto, who simply stood there. "I see that you got adopted by Fugaku and that you have fully matured Sharingan, which means that life treated you harder than I hoped for." "You won't understand what I had suffered," shouted Naruto and attacked Minato, who caught his punch without any effort. "Believe me," said Minato softly, trying to calm down and comfort Naruto. "I can imagine what you have suffered." It took Minato over 30 minutes to calm down Naruto, as his fiery Uzumaki temper flared and he looked at Minato with hate and anger. Minato just sighed and looked at Itachi with knowing look preparing for incoming barrage of attacks. When they were done, Naruto was somewhat exhausted. "Now since we are done," said Minato, looking at Naruto who laid on the ground, panting. "I want to say sorry for sealing Kyuubi in you, but there is much more to that story. When I was sealing him, he offered to protect you, since he knew the one that ripped him out of Kushina-chan was going to try to do that once again. Not to mention he said he sensed something special in your chakra." "To-san, what are you going to do with him?" asked Naruto, not fully understanding what was going to happen. "I'm going to remove the seal, thus allowing you and him to work together," said Minato, and once again snapped his fingers. They were back to that sever, which lightened up a bit, and full form of Kyuubi was visible with his gigantic 9 tails and rabbit ears. "Kurama, behave yourself or I will be forced to put back the seal. We both know that I left several precautions, just in case." "I will, Yandame-sama," said Kurama and bowed his head lightly as a sign of respect towards Naruto and Namikaze Minato. Minato walked to the seal keeping the gate, ripped it apart and turned the key that was behind it. After that he glowed and disappeared in huge ball of light, forcing them to shade their eyes. "So you are going to work with me?" Naruto asked, looking at Kyuubi. "Yes," said Large Fox and looked at Naruto. "As I don't like it, I need to do that. For my own sake too. I will give you chakra when you will need it. I will help you and I will protect your mind from probes and attacks." "Cool," said Naruto and looked at Itachi. "What are you doing here and how did you get here?" "I'm just watching it and I'm thanks to my Sharingan," said Itachi and saw a wave of orange chakra approaching him quickly. "I'm getting out now," he quickly added. "Good," said Naruto. That training trip was going to be fruitful for both Sasuke and Naruto. They trained a lot, but also had a lot of fun away from the village and without people looking at them and expecting wonders from them. Here they could be simply them. Not two prodigy that were expected to accomplish everything they could. But that didn't mean they weren't training. They did a lot of it, but it was in a way that was less stressing and more enjoyable for them. Not to mention that they had dozens of spars, 2-on-1 against Itachi or Shursui, or 3-on-1 against Shursui or Itachi, with second one helping them. When the end of holidays arrived, they wished they could be longer as they enjoyed them a lot and wanted for them to lengthen as much as possible. They changed in appearance, at least partially. Naruto started growing his hair, which were getting longer, and he almost looked like his father with his hair. Only difference was that he had most of them pulled into a ponytail with 2 bangs framing his face so that they wouldn't fall into his eyes. They were sometimes annoying and they could be a dangerous distraction, and that wasn't a good thing, not at all. Especially not when in the middle of fight and when madly dodging projectiles. Excluding that, not much changed in appearance of Naruto and he mostly looked like he had looked. However, it was Sasuke who changed the most. He started wearing some armor plates on his hands and legs to protect them from too hard impact when sparring or fighting, and he let his hair grow longer than he previously had them. They were walking through the forests of Hai no Kuni, getting closer to Konoha when they felt loud feline roar that came from the trees to the north of them. They looked at each other and instinctively took out their weapons, either kunai or sword, whatever was closer. For few moments nothing at all happened. However, after brief interlude filled with silence, from the trees emerged large white tiger, with 2 lightning-shaped markings on his cheeks. It looked at Naruto as if he was searching him. Tiger walked silently towards Naruto. Claws retracted and was behaving peacefully. When it got close to him, it dropped onto the ground large scroll. "Naruto-sama," said Tiger, bowing to Naruto Tiger Clan that was always allies of Uzumaki Clan, along with dragons, and we wish to give you our contract. When Naruto heard those words, he was stupefied as he knew about summoning contracts and about their importance. Yet he didn't expect to receive one so soon. He expected to get dragons before his Chunin exams, but not sooner, yet here were tigers and were offering him their contract. Looks of shock were visible on the faces of Shursui and Sasuke, while Itachi managed to keep his facade, yet it was glaring obvious that he was as shocked as everybody else was. "I would be honored," said Naruto, an unrolled scroll that was laying on the ground in front of him. He could see line of names written in blood. He was able to recognize his mother name in last field that was filled. He bit his thumb and let some blood flow. When it was flowing, he used it to write his name in blood and left fingerprints of his hand beneath it. "Done well," said Tiger, looking at Naruto, and growled something that was almost impossible to recognize. When he did that, on Naruto's left forearm appeared tattoo. It was tattoo of lunging tiger. Smear your blood across it. Channel some chakra and it will summon your personal summon. I'm not one. I was simply a messenger. After those words, tiger poofed away, leaving 4 shocked Uchiha standing there and looking at each other, not sure what to do with it. Yet it was real as their Sharingan weren't revealing any genjutsu. Naruto glanced at that tattoo, wondering what to do with it. I guess I will see what I will summon, said Naruto as he smeared blood across the tattoo and slammed his palm onto the ground. When he did that, there was a large plume of smoke that covered the area, and when it was gone there stood large white tiger with black stripes and violet eyes. 3 stripes made rings around eyes of it, and it looked rather intimidating and deadly. By what Naruto guessed, it weighed well over 300 or 400 kilos and was huge. Tip of its tail was swinging lazily as it looked at Naruto curiously. Uzumaki Naruto. It said, I'm Seishin, your personal summon and son of Uriai, ruler of our clan. I'm pleased to meet you, politely said Naruto and scratched head of tiger, which nodded approvingly when he felt it. You can get to know him while we are getting to Konoha, said Itachi, and Naruto slowly nodded, while his tiger nodded approvingly and soft purr escaped from its mouth. When our favorite hero returned to Konohagakure no Sato, it was early evening and last week of August, which meant days were getting shorter and weather was more rainy and cloudy than usually. But excluding that, nothing major changed. Only few people glanced at that giant tiger walking alongside Naruto as if he should be there, which usually was a sign of strong bond between summoner and his summon. Such bonds were usually based on mutual respect, understanding and friendship, as summon that was forced to serve would do that, but wasn't going to do things as willingly as one that was asked by summoner, which treated him well. It seems you got all attention you could get, any? Itachi asked, looking at Naruto, who seemed to ignore all of those stares sent at his summon. Nah, shrugged off Naruto. Seishin is getting it, he added after glancing at tiger walking alongside him, which only softly purred and bowed its head in agreement, while tip of its tail was slowly swinging, sign that he was relaxed and felt safe. This year at the academy you will be allowed to use jutsu during spars, said Itachi, looking at that tiger. This contract is going to be a curse and a blessing, said Shursui. You will fully discover meaning of a word, fangirls, especially with your hairs and your summons, which in girls' opinion are cute. I'm not cute, huffed Seishin and bared his fangs. I'm one of Tiger Clan and I'm a hunter and a warrior, not a cute cat. Sure, said Itachi, but you will see how girls will react to you. There is a reason why I don't like to let my mask go off my face. Ask Kakashi about his fangirls issues. Honestly speaking, almost any powerful or famous shinobi have issues with them, and you will need to survive 3 or 2 more years with them, and later pray not to get one onto your team. Naruto looked at Itachi as if he was considering in which form and where his Inai-san would look better. When he did that, behind him appeared image of Shinigami, causing Itachi to gulp even more, as he knew this could end really badly, at least for him, and he wanted to survive this day. I didn't say anything, Itachi quickly assured Naruto, and watched as Shinigami nodded, pleased and content with what happened. I wonder if you will be able to summon crows, as they are not a summoning contract per se. He will, said Seishin, looking at Itachi. Technically they aren't a summoning contract, but a part of your clan, however weird it sounds. It's an old loophole, but abused to say the least. Same could be said about Senju and Sarutobi clans and Saru summoning contract. Good, said Itachi, and kept walking towards Uchiha district, which looked as good as it usually looked. Itachi entered Uchiha Mansion followed by his younger brothers and Seishin, who was getting as much attention as Itachi was getting, and that was weird as Itachi was Magnus for attention of everybody wherever he went. Ka-san, Tu-san, we are back, Itachi said as he entered the building and looked around. Nothing changed at all. Wait. One thing changed. 2 small runts appeared out of one of doors and charged at Itachi, hitting him, on whose face appeared small smile. Oni-chan, they shouted when they saw Itachi and who was with him, and so far they didn't notice that tiger that was with them, yet was few paces behind. Good to see you two, said Itachi, getting their attention. They looked almost exactly the same, had long and spiky black hair, and were wearing typical Uchiha clothes. They were Uchiha Izuna and Minato, youngest sons of Fugaku and Mikoto, not to mention that they were twins and currently were 4 years old. Also, they were small balls of energy and ones that caused Itachi to mutter things about Uzumaki genes, that were dormant in their family, as energetic as Naruto and were way more worse than Naruto. Itachi, Naruto, Sasuke, said Makoto when she saw them, and on her face appeared bright smile as she watched them. Good to see you back in good health. We had fun and found something interesting, said Itachi, stressing the word interesting. Interesting? Asked Makoto, her eyebrow rising a little and looking at Itachi. Ka-san, said Naruto, showing what was tattooed onto his forearm. Tiger summoning contract. You are lucky, she said, and noticed large tiger that moved forward and caused Minato and Izuna to jump away in fear. And I guess that is your personal summon. It is, admitted Naruto and looked at that stood at his side, looking happy and looking around curiously, tasting the air and searching for any threads. That tiger is your summon? Asked Izuna, looking at Naruto and later at that tiger, not believing if it was true. It is, said Seishin and yawned, showing his full set of rather long and sharp fangs. And the name is Seishin. They both quickly nodded, a little afraid of that summon which poofed away moments later, returning to his homeland to rest and have fun with the rest of his family. Dinner will be soon, said Makoto. You will have time to tell your stories then. Now get your gear into your rooms and wash before it. Hi, all of them chorused and disappeared in something that looked like Shunshin. Rest of the day they spent with family, same as next week as everybody after longer missions that is over month-long or ones that were of S-rank was given at least a week of break to rest and relax as they were extremely tiring on both mind and body. When the holidays ended they were forced to return to academy for another boring year of it, which mostly meant sleeping through classes or at least trying to do so, while paying some degree of attention to topic of it. Only ones that were worth any attention were practical ones or sparring sessions, during which they were allowed to use ninjutsu and other ninja arts, not only taijutsu and weapons. When brothers entered their class inside of the academy, multiple people looked at them, mostly at Naruto as he looked more and more like Yondaime Hokage, and now there was this aura created by him, that he was better, faster, stronger, and deadlier than anybody in the room. It was unsettling everybody as they didn't felt too comfortable with him nearby. It especially irritated one from civilian families as they were not thinking well about him, while for shinobi it was only indication of how powerful and strong he was. Once Irika entered the classroom, he immediately noticed more wild look of Naruto and that he looked to be even stronger than he was before. If he was going to gauge how strong he would say he was around high genin, if not more. Today was going to show how good he was, as they would have mainly sparring sessions with all types of ninja arts allowed, which was going to make them interesting as he suspected that quite a lot of clan children trained with their clans during break, and they could improve a lot as certain clans had a habit of taking their children away from village for some time to relax and train in more enjoyable way than they usually did, and such training could be quite fruitful one. Welcome back, said Irika, getting their attention, although some female members of the class kept sending glances at Sasuke, while ignoring Naruto, which was usual thing. Since today is first day after a break, and I know that some of you trained during summer break more than other, we will have sparring session on the training ground outside of the academy. It will create new ranking system inside of class, and it will be used during rest of training sessions. They walked outside to the training grounds and Irika told them to draw lots. He asked them to read them aloud, and when they did that, he scribbled those numbers on piece of paper and thus created schedule of matches. First fight will be between Inuzuka Kiba and Uchiha Naruto. He announced and indicated at the training ground that was cleared for those spars. Come on, Akamaru, shouted Kiba, and his Ninken barked in agreement, while Naruto simply walked onto training ground, stretching his muscles as he was walking. I will show you who is better. We will see, said Naruto and looked at Irika, waiting for the beginning of fight. Begin, shouted Irika and jumped out of the way. They shouldn't cause too much damage, but nobody was sure about that. Still as loud as you used to be? Naruto asked with raised eyebrow. He didn't receive any answers, only Kiba charged straight at Naruto, who dodged wild slashed, jabs, punches, kicks, and even attempts to bite him by Akamaru. However, his luck wasn't endless and he miscalculated one slash. It almost plowed through his eyes and into his skull. However, before it could reach its designed target, something opened inside of mind of Naruto and he knew how to survive. Kamui! Yelled Naruto at the last moment, and Kiba attack passed through his as if he wasn't even there, yet image of his body was there. On Kiba's face was look of shock and horror. Naruto materialized behind Kiba. his hand clutching right eye from which was generously flowing out a stream of blood. Naruto after that kicked back and hit Kiba in his spine, sending him onto the ground, unconscious. When he did that, Naruto looked around, visibly exhausted, and blood was still flowing out of his right eye, on sclera of which were visible multiple veins, pulsing with blood as it was flowing through them. Sign of overuse of dojutsu or extremely big amounts of chakra passing through the eye and chakra network there. Winner Uchiha Naruto, said Irika, are you all right? Yes, said Naruto, not caring about that blood as he knew it would stop on its own, sooner or later. He calmed himself down, tied his hair as they got loose during that fight, and walked towards place where were sitting academy students that were watching those spars where he sat near Sasuke. You unlocked first power of your Manjikyu? Sasuke quietly asked Naruto, making sure that only Naruto could hear him as it was the clan-only jutsu, which was furiously guarded by it, and even inside of clan it wasn't the best known thing as only few knew about them. Yes, said Naruto. I need to ask you know who about it. Go on, said Sasuke, and Naruto nodded. Naruto closed his eyes and focused on Kyuubi. Kurama, do you know what was that? That was Kamui, slowly said Kyuubi. It is space-time ninjutsu that gives you ability to move into your private dimension or place things there. Right eye, as you discovered, sends you there, while left sends things there. The bigger thing, the more chakra needed. You probably used something like strong Rasengan or dozens of clones as it was done instinctively, and for the first time it took way more chakra than it should take. Thanks, said Naruto and opened his eyes, which for a moment were red and slitted ones. That is until they morphed back into Sharingan with veins still visible and pulsing with blood. They were itching Naruto and would be such for probably next few hours as they needed to adapt to such strain placed on them. Yes, it is one of powers of our dojutsu, said Naruto looking at Sasuke, who simply nodded. And it is taxing, I feel like after whole day of training on control of my special chakra. Wow, said Sasuke, looking at Naruto. Any idea why so much chakra was used? Instinctively used and first-time activation. Only, explained Naruto. At least it's better than what Aniki suffered when he activated his for the first time. True, agreed Sasuke and focused back on fights that were unfolding in front of them. Rest of the day passed rather calmly as they watched other fights and compared their notes on different fighting styles, how to deal with them and how to use them. After all, true power of Uchiha came from Sharingan, which was a main tool for them. To copy various styles and mix them together into one style, or to create completely your own style that was only based on one of common styles. Such style was Hummingbird Fist of Yondaime. Are you sure about doing that? Naruto asked, looking at Sasuke, not believing if he heard it right. Such things were extremely rare and now they were almost forgotten. They were sitting on the roof of mansion as the sun was hiding behind the horizon and it was getting late. It was one of better points to see the sunset or sunrise as it was one of the highest buildings in this part of the village. Yes, slowly said Sasuke. We both know that we are brothers in all but blood, and this will only strengthen us. I also want to say sorry for my earlier treatment of you. So that is my apology. Honestly speaking, said Naruto, I'm quite shocked by this. I never expected it, especially from you. Well, you are my brother for both good and bad, said Sasuke, uncomfortably twirling kunai between his fingers, as they were speaking about one almost forgotten ritual in Uchiha clan. And I honestly feel bad about my previous treatment of you. If I was going to be honest, you caused a lot good things from my point of view. I actually need to care about my grades, and Itachi and I is actually willing to train me or both of us. It seems that I have good influence on many people, chuckled Naruto when he heard those words. You saw how Aniki changed from the time when I was adopted till now? Yes, Sasuke agreed and looked at the blonde sitting to his right. So, do you agree? I guess I do, said Naruto, and Sasuke nodded. He took his kunai and both he and Naruto placed their palms of it, gently pressing them onto the blade to let some blood flow out of their hands and to cover the blade of kunai. After that, it was the time for thing that truly mattered in this particular ritual, that is oaths and tattoo that was rather unique and easy to recognize. I, Uchiha Sasuke, swear to treat this Uchiha Naruto as my blood brother and onto the battlefield to fight at his side, said slowly Sasuke, and his eyes glowed red, sign of his activating Sharingan. And I, Uchiha Naruto, Swear to treat this Uchiha Sasuke as my blood brother, and on the battlefield to fight at his side," said Naruto, and at the same time his eyes glowed red, sign of activating Sharingan. After that they placed their bloodied palms on their right arms and did the same chain of seals. It was one of chains taught to every single Uchiha clan member. They went through it, and when they did this on their right arms appeared Uchiha fan, with 2 swords crossed under it. It was one of customs or rituals that showed how close 2 members of clan were. Best example were Itachi and Sasuke. Such members usually fought together and protected each other. It was so-called sign and oath of brotherhood. They were popular even inside of the family, as they showed that certain siblings were close to each other, more close to themselves than to other siblings. 3 years later, it was finally the moment they awaited from the moment they started the academy, graduation, and placement in teams. Today they sat in their seats for the last time and were waiting for their teacher, Umino Irika, to arrive and give them their Hitai 8, along with telling who was going to be with whom on team. During that time they changed a lot. Naruto grew up a couple of inches and now was just tad over 5 feet, same as Sasuke. Their clothes didn't change that much, excluding that now Naruto had on his back both katana and both sabers, not to mention that to his left leg was tied second holster. But this one was round and there were 3 side by side. Those were holsters for scrolls and sealing supplies. Also on his left arm he now had new bracelet with few tiger teeth in it, sign that he was Tiger Summoner. His canines extended a little, as it was one of changes caused by this summoning contract, and were extending slightly over his lip. Previously relatively short hairs, now were longer and were extending well beyond shoulder blades. Yet they were as spiky and unruly as before, which caused that they looked like giant mane, even if they were tied into ponytail and only 2 bangs framed his face. Sasuke was as tall as was Naruto, and instead of one of katana of Red Death, now he had new one, but it was also made by Uzumaki blacksmiths back before the fall of Uzumaki. Hilt of it was completely black and was covered in red silk ribbon. Guard of it was round and was shaped to resemble Uchiha crest. Actual blade was a tiny bit longer than usual katana and was pitch black, sign of extremely good chakra conductivity, as the darker it was the more infused with chakra steel was. Scabbard of it was pitch black with simple crest painted on it, but excluding that there were no decorations. His hairs were now as long as were Itachi one, and he wore them in similar style as he was wearing them. He preferred that style to the wild mane that Naruto preferred. Flashback on. Jonin Commander, ANBU Commander, and Hokage sat in one of conference rooms inside of Hokage Tower, scratching their heads and thinking who to place in which team and with whom, not to mention who should be made Jonin-sensei of that team. "One is obvious," said Hokage, placing on one pile 3 folders holding data about 3 genins, and on top of that he placed 4th one, holding data about their sensei. "It is classic Ino Shikacho, and their Jonin sensei will be my son Sarutobi Asuma. Which leaves us with one interesting problem," said Shikaku, or maybe even 2, Naruto and Sasuke. "We all know that they know how to fight as a team, so there is a little sense in destroying that team, yet that will unbalance this team quite heavily. What about doing typical assault team?" suggested ANBU Commander. Itachi mentioned a lot of times that they are mostly close to middle-range fighters, rather well rounded up, so they would need sensei that would guide them and support kunoichi. "That wouldn't be a bad idea," said Shikaku. "About sensei, it should be someone with a lot of jutsu and chakra, as they will be learning new one extremely quickly, so that doesn't leave too many choices. It will be either Uchiha Itachi, Sasuke, or Hatake Kakashi. Sasuke or Itachi, no, as we generally do not give genin a sensei that is closely related to them," said Hokage, "so it will be Hatake Kakashi, and question is about their last teammate." "What about Haruno Sakura?" asked ANBU, picking up her folder. "She is top student, or at least was in academics, and looks like the best kunoichi in terms of theory. Her physical aspects look like average, but well, Inu will train her." "The best out of bad," said Shikaku. "I don't see an other good option. So Team 7 will be Hatake Kakashi, Uchiha Sasuke, Uchiha Naruto, and Haruno Sakura," said Hokage, putting those folders onto another pile. "And last team will be 8, Yuhi Kurinai, Hyuga Hinata, Inazuka Kiba, and Aburame Shino." As Irika read who was placed in teams, there were heard shouts of joy and happiness, but when he read who was going to be last member of Team 7, heads of 2 members of it hit their desk as they disliked fangirls. "Those placements are permanent and they won't be changed," finished Irika as he gazed over the class. He felt like he was teaching the best class of this year. "Your sensei will be here anytime soon to pick you up. But before I leave you, I would like to say that I think that you are the best class that I ever taught and I feel proud about what you achieved. After he said those words, he walked out of the room, and as he was passing through them, first batch of sensei came in. Teams were walking out one by one, until it was only Team 7 left inside of the room. "Where is that damned copycat?" growled Naruto. "It's over 2 hours late and he is still not here." "Did you forget what Tusan and Aniki told us about Kakashi?" asked him Sasuke. "After all, they told us 2 days ago who will be our sensei, as it was announced 3 days ago for Jonin." "Right," sighed Naruto. "He is supposed to be 2 or 3 hours late, and I swear I will skin him alive if he is going to be late even one more minute." "Kit, pay more attention to your surroundings, he is already here," interrupted him Kurama, who borrowed Naruto's senses and was able to spot Kakashi. But he had an advantage, as he was easily able to see the flow of chakra in people, causing most of genjutsu to be useless against him. "What? Kurama, are you sure about that?" asked Naruto aloud. Thankfully, Sakura didn't notice it, as she was too focused fawning over Sasuke, who seemed a little annoyed by that attention, and his eyes narrowed when he heard Naruto, as he knew about his guest. "Yes," said Kyuubi, and left Naruto to his own business. "Genjutsu Kai," said Naruto as he pushed out of his body massive wave of chakra, and his eyes snapped into Sharingan. When wave of chakra left his body and charged into the room, it broke genjutsu placed by Kakashi on himself, shocking him a little, as he didn't expect that kind of things to happen to him. He was even more shaken when he felt how much chakra was used by Naruto, as it looked that he pushed so much that some jonin would be envious about what he did. "Since you have found me, meet me on the roof in 3 minutes," said Kakashi, before disappearing in Shunshin, followed by Sasuke and Naruto. They arrived on the roof moments later after Kakashi and looked at him. Shunshin, fully matured Sharingan, and in Naruto case Manjikyu, summoning contract, 2 chakra natures, trained in Kenjutsu. "Did I miss something?" said Kakashi as he looked at 2 of his students, ones that were already called prodigies, which was interesting choice of word to describe them. "No, I don't think you missed anything," said Sasuke. "Nope," agreed Naruto as he looked at Kakashi in wonder. It seemed this time he did his homework as he was supposed to do. "Good," said Kakashi, and at the same time Sakura appeared. "Since all of us are here, we can begin. Introduce yourselves, you start." Sakura. "Maybe you should start, sensei," said Sakura, looking at Kakashi, who slowly nodded. "Name is Hatake Kakashi. I have many likes, few dislikes, multiple hobbies, and few dreams," said Kakashi lazily, and looked at Sakura. "Pinky, your turn." Male members of Team 7 guessed her whole introduction before she even started it, and when it was over they wanted to puke. She was damned fangirl, and that was the worst kind of shinobi that could ever exist, as they were pretty much useless. "Next is Blondie," said Kakashi, pointing at Naruto. "I'm Uchiha Naruto. I like reading books, drawing, my family, and training. I dislike traitors and those who leave comrades behind. My hobby is reading and training. My dream is to become a Hokage." "Blackie, your turn," said Kakashi, looking at Sasuke, who had almost the same introduction as Naruto. Once it was over, Kakashi looked over his team, gaze sweeping over each face. "Meet me on Training Ground 7 in 15 minutes. We will start our training there." After Kakashi said those words, he disappeared in plume of smoke, leaving stupefied genin to try to figure out what the hell had happened to them and where was Training Ground 7. They looked at each other, jumped down onto the street below them, and went searching for training ground they were supposed to find. It took them over 10 minutes of looking around and running, trying to find the field as quickly as possible. When they got onto the field, they saw that it was a large clearing surrounded by deep and dark forests. Through one side of clearing was passing small river, and in the middle of it were 3 tree stumps with signs of heavy usage, as there were multiple scars and burns visible on their surface, effects of years upon years of shinobi training. There was also kunai-shaped obelisk there, made out black stone with multiple names engraved upon the surface of it. Those were names of shinobi that lost their lives during their service to Konohagakure no Sato. In the middle of it stood Kakashi with his book pulled out and reading it lazily. He seemed like he didn't care about what was happening all around him, while in truth he was carefully watching them, analyzing them, and assessing their strengths and weaknesses. First thing that caught his attention was red dress of Sakura, along with her hairs, which were going to be a problem. When he assessed all of those things, he decided it was enough of show and time for true beginning of training. "Good that you are on time," said Kakashi when he closed and pocketed his book. He was getting serious with them. "I was given this team to continue legacy of Team 7. But so far you are just brats, not a proper genin. Let's start with you, Sakura." When Kakashi said those words, he received looks that he last time received when he was training ANBU recruits. Oh, those were good old times. He remembered seeing Itachi cursing his name for ordering him, Prodigy of the great Uchiha clan, to find and patch all holes in the walls of Konoha. "You are excellent academics and theory-wise. Also, you have perfect chakra control," said Kakashi, getting her attention, and she beamed with pride when she heard those words. "But your taijutsu style is obnoxious. Your chakra capacity is extremely low. You can make only 2 bunshin, 1 henge, 3 kawarimi for 15 minutes, which is bad. Next, your weapon handling skills are theory-wise good, but practical side is bad." When Kakashi finished, Sakura was red with anger, and on her forehead appeared vein that could burst open, and her mouth started to open. Before she could say anything, Kakashi glared at, and she closed her mouth with audible click. "Good," he said and looked at Naruto. "Now it's time for Naruto. Good shinobi with so much chakra that Kage would be envious, decent control of it, 2 elemental chakra types, Sharingan, good weapon handling, basics of Fuinjutsu, extremely good evasion skills and summoning contract." When Kakashi stopped saying advantages of Naruto as a shinobi, Naruto was nodding approvingly, while Sakura looked at him enviously. Now, on the other hand, he has famous fiery temper of Uzumaki no Ikazoku, first doing something and later thinking about it and consequences of what he was doing, not to mention that his genjutsu are bad. Assuming we don't speak about genjutsu placed by Sharingan, as those are scary thing. Kakashi looked at his squad and saw that Naruto didn't react at all to him listing all of his disadvantages. He only nodded as if he already knew them, which wasn't a huge surprise. Like he knew them or at least suspected them from training with the clan and on his own. "Last, but not least, Sasuke," said Kakashi, looking at older Uchiha. Out of 2 he had, on a good side, decent control of chakra, 2 elemental chakra types, Sharingan, good weapon handling and some genjutsu knowledge. On the other hand, you have problems controlling your temper and your chakra capacity could be better. When Kakashi was done with naming all of those flaws, his students looked like they were going to murder him slowly and painfully. But that was expected after such thing. Nobody liked to have their flaws pointed out, especially not publicly. Ma, don't be so hasty," said Kakashi, looking at his students. "There is much legacy to be carried by this team and its name. Naruto, can you tell us who was on the first generation of Team 7? Sarutobi Hiruzen, that is Sandaime Hokage, and his 2 advisors Udatane Koharu and Mitokado Hamura under Nidaime Hokage Senju Tobarama," said Naruto. "Correct," nodded Kakashi and looked at Sakura. "Who was on the next generation of it?" "Densetsu no Sannin," said Sakura as she took pride in her academics. "Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru under Sarutobi Hiruzen." "Sasuke, who was on the next generation of that team?" Kakashi asked Sasuke. "Namikaze Minato, Hyuga Hayashi, and Nara Yoshino under Jiraiya," said Sasuke, and Kakashi only nodded. "Correct," said Kakashi and looked at them, "and last generation was under Namikaze Minato, Yandaime Hokage. It was me, Uchiha Obito, and Noara Rin. Team 7 was always pride of Konoha, and I was asked to turn you into such. You will curse my name, but I will train you to be the best shinobi you can be, or I will be damned." "So what that means?" asked Sakura, unaware of what was going to happen. "Let the training begin," said Kakashi, and that was beginning of pain and suffering for all of them. Even Sasuke and Naruto, who were used to training with Itachi and Shisui, were surprised by what was the meaning of training in the eyes of that jonin. At first it looked innocently. Kakashi told them to run laps around the training field. That wouldn't be bad, but running 20 laps with chakra blocked, being tied together and with all kinds of weapons launched at you was unpleasant. That is putting that lightly. In truth, it was extremely tiring and exhausting thing to do. They were forced to dodge kunai, shuriken, senbon, swords, knives, sickles, sabers, spears, arrows, and 1,001 weapon, not many of which they were able to name. When they were done with that, they were covered in scratches, minor cuts, grime, and all kind of dust and grass. Not to mention that they were laying on the grass there, utterly exhausted. And that was only the beginning of their torture for the day. Next on the agenda were physical exercises, starting with sets of push-ups, sit-ups, crunches, squats, and other exercises designed to strengthen their bodies. "Now, since we are done with first part of the training," said Kakashi, getting their attention, "it is time for lunch. This time I decided to get you lunch to show what you should eat, as a life of shinobi is exhausting." He handed them bento boxes with their lunch. They opened them and looked what is inside. "You want us to eat it?" asked Sakura after a moment when she saw what was inside, and it took her a moment to process the data. Everything inside looked like it was providing a lot of energy. "Yes," said Kakashi, and noticed her building up protests. Shinobi needs between 300 to 500 calories per day, depending on type of mission, chakra capacity, and day. "So you need to eat this." She wanted to protest, but she reluctantly nodded when she noticed that rest of her team didn't have similar qualms about eating their lunches and happily dug in. Next thing after their lunch and moment of rest was taijutsu training. Sasuke and Naruto thought it would be an easy thing for them, but they were so wrong about this. He was slave driver and perfectionist till it was well into the night. He was watching them going from kata of it to another kata and correcting any and all flaws of them and mistakes made by them. Brunt of his attention got Sakura, but boys weren't completely spared from his attention. They simply got less of it as they learned it from Itachi or Shursui, not to mention other clan members, and they had a lot of opportunities to practice their skills in it. Soon there was going to be a small tournament inside of clan, and they were going to use some of those abilities during it. When they were done with their training, it was well over 11 in the night and they were exhausted. In best shape was Naruto, but that was the advantage of Uzumaki genes mixed with Senju and Uchiha ones. Those 3 lines had a lot of chakra, and addition of it from Kyuubi wasn't small, not to mention that Fox was providing healing factor rarely seen, which was able to heal dislocated bones or torn muscles in matter of hours, if not even faster. "That was pretty good day of training," said Kakashi once training was over and they were walking back to the center of the village. "I will come with you as I need to speak with your parents about certain things. Since Sakura, your house is the closest one, I will start with you." Sakura nodded, but Kakashi easily picked up tensed muscles and slight nervousness she was trying to hide. But against ANBU or former one, it wouldn't work. They were trained to pick up such things, and hiding them from them was usually pointless. Unless someone was really good at hiding things and not showing a single sign of hiding them. They arrived in front of Haruno household. And Kakashi let the kids stay a little behind, as he knew that a sign of two Uchiha with blazing Sharingan wasn't the best first thing to be seen, as Sasuke and Naruto were using them to clearly see in darkness. He thought about what he knew about Haruno family. From what he knew, they were one of the merchant families and migrated here in early days of Konoha. They had close ties with the court and neighboring countries. Not to mention that they had one of seats on the council, which was annoying, or at least could be. After few moments, doors were opened by a short woman with rather nice-looking body, with green eyes and pink hairs that were neatly tied. She didn't even notice Kakashi or other members of his team. She only saw Sakura there. "Sakura, what have I told you? You are not allowed to stay outside after 10 in the evening. It's improper and not becoming a maiden of the Haruno household. Really, what will our acquaintances think?" The woman was looking at Sakura with reprimanding and unimpressed gaze, as if she was thinking it was a worse thing her daughter could do. Finally, she noticed presence of Jonin and rest of his team. "Thank you, Ninja-san, for returning my wayward daughter." She only gave shallow bow that was required by formality, but nothing else. Once she did that, she turned back to Sakura to continue dressing her down and berating. But before she could do that, Kakashi decided to step in, as he didn't like direction in which it was going. She wanted to stop one of his students from becoming a ninja. Not going to happen on his watch. "Haruno-san," said Kakashi, getting older Haruno attention. "I'm afraid that there must have been some sort of gap in the communication, as you had not been informed that your daughter Sakura had passed her genin test, and as such she is now one of shinobi of Konoha." When Kakashi said those words, Mabuki looked somewhat startled, but after a moment on her face appeared look of shock and disbelief. She tried to interrupt him, but he wasn't going to allow her to do that. And as an active member of Shinobi Corps, Haruno Sakura will be asked to respond to a call from Hokage-sama, Jonin Commander, ANBU Commander, or her squad commander at any time of the day or night. It also meant that she can be deployed outside of Konoha for missions ranging from 1 day to 1 month. That is, until she passes her Chunin exam, that she can be deployed for one ranging up to 3 months, or even in extreme cases to 6 months. As he was speaking, look of disdain and shock was almost visible on Mabuki's face. It was almost funny to watch. assuming you weren't Sakura. So I believe that giving your daughter a curfew will be a hindrance, not to mention that some training sessions will be carried out during night, and as such she will be away from home for a whole night. Kakashi didn't change his casual stance at all, but it was obvious he was dead serious as he didn't take out his trusty book and was using the voice he reserved for annoying people. Taking out his book would undermine his reputation and could push the line a little bit too far, and that wasn't the best thing to do. Not with her. He noticed that she was preparing an answer and he wasn't going to like it. There will be no need to assign that kind of missions, as I feel that Sakura will come to her senses sooner or later, and that kind of training won't be necessary. Once Mabuki said that she gave a beautiful yet empty smile, one that would fool a civilian but not a ninja, as for some of them, especially ones with dojutsu, it was obvious it was an empty smile. She didn't want her daughter to spend the time in the academy, as she thought it was a waste of time. I see, said Kakashi, before the woman managed to slam the doors in his face. He stopped them and looked at her. Then I must inform you that she needs to serve in Shinobi Corp at least until reaching the rank of Chunin or participating in Chunin exams 3 times. There were 2 more options, but there was no need for her to know about them as it was safer for everybody's mind. I see, said Mabuki. May I at least know with whom she will be on her team? If you wish you can. Shrugged off Kakashi and looked at her, Uchiha Sasuke and Uchiha Naruto. When Kakashi said second name on woman face appeared look of disdain and horror, but she didn't say a thing. She closed those doors and that was a 1 battle by Kakashi, but it was only first out of many that were going to be fought between him and Sakura against her mother. Kakashi looked at his remaining students and jumped onto the roof, motioning for them to follow him there, which they happily did. They stood there watching Konoha lay to sleep, yet there was always some kind of activity going at all times. Some teams were training at night, shinobi were returning and deploying, and BU were patrolling the village. Let's go, he quietly said, started running towards Uchiha District, followed by his students, which quickly did that. They passed over the wall that was guarding the district and into it, where he jumped onto ground as he knew they drew some attention with that kind of entrance into it. When Kakashi landed on the ground, people that were around them nodded in his direction with some respect, as he was one of the best shinobi of Konohagakure. How can anybody expect her to be a good shinobi if she has such rules? Asked Sasuke. If I remember correctly, I didn't have such rule once I turned 8 or 9. Not to mention that some training with Itachi was done outside of the village at night. She is from civilian family, explained Kakashi, and his students looked at him. Some of our rules seem weird to them and vice versa. I guess that makes some sense, said slowly Sasuke as they walked through the district, heading towards middle of it, and they could see people in happy mood walking around and decorating their homes in preparations for incoming feasts. They entered the mansion and Kakashi didn't even bother to knock, as he was often guest inside of it in the past. After all, for some time he was Itachi squad captain and later was commander of ANBU. You trained them well, Kakashi said to Itachi, once he found eldest son of Fugaku, and yet I feel that they are hiding a lot of things from me. They are, said Itachi, looking at the shinobi who was previously his captain. You taught me to never show all of my strength to my enemy, and I taught them the same thing. If you want to see what they can do, give them tracking exercise. Also, there is our small tournament in 2 days. As usual, rest of the team is invited, so I suggest you watch it as I'm going to be fighting one of them. I might do that, said Kakashi, as I know that Asuma and Kurenai will take their teams to watch it for the sake of seeing how typical Uchiha fights. It might be educational, said Itachi, smirking a bit, especially if Naruto will be forced to use certain style to counter Interceptor Fist. You should know it as certain sensei of yours created it. You don't mean he learned Hummingbird and Hiration? Asked Kakashi, not believing what he heard. Maybe, replied Itachi, keeping his emotions under tight control. You will learn during the tournament. Kakashi left the manor deep in thoughts, as he knew what those words could mean, and it would make those fights really interesting ones to watch. Especially for Sakura, as she knew only basic Academy Tiger Fist, which here would be completely useless. Any half-decent genin would tear her apart in few minutes. With even first level of Sharingan, it would be even faster. On the next day, whole Team 7 was back on their training field rather early. It was around 7 in the morning when they got there, and all of them were yawning and trying to stay awake as they were half asleep, after so little sleep during previous night. Good that you are here, said Kakashi, walking onto the training field, clearly awake and rather full of energy. Due to certain events that will happen tomorrow, we won't do anything too crazy today. What do you mean by those events? Asked Sakura. Tournament that is kind of custom and tradition for Uchiha clan. Solar solstice will be tomorrow, and as such they celebrate it with that tournament and certain other things at night. Explained Kakashi, it can be watched by anybody that wishes to, but participate in it can only Uchiha, Senju, Uzumaki, or any invited shinobi from other clan. And since Naruto and Sasuke are going to compete in it, while I'm going to take you there to watch it, they need to be well rested before tomorrow, so we will only work on battle tactics, strategy, and theory. After they were done with training for the day, it was rather early as Kakashi knew that some celebrations started in the evening of the day before, and there was unwritten agreement between clans and Hokage that unless it was a time of war they can recall their shinobi for their clan rituals and feasts, and that was the case here. Sakura, can we speak for a little? Kakashi asked his female student, when his other two disappeared to take part in clan rituals that already were starting. Sure, sensei, said Sakura and looked at her sensei, who lazily walked towards the village. I want to speak about tomorrow. That tournament is sacred thing for Uchiha and was for Namikaze. So be on your best behavior and I will be at 8 in the morning at your home to pick you up to take you there. Since Naruto and Sasuke are sons of Fugaku-sama, we will be sitting in box reserved for clan head family and close associates of it, so be mindful to who you speak as there will be probably whole elder council of clan. Maybe Hokage or his heir and Fugaku-sama with rest of his family. So while Naruto will simply ignore being called Baka, there it won't be that well tolerated. After all, he is third in line to take headship of his clan. I understand, slowly said Sakura. Good, said happily Kakashi on the brighter note. It will be a great occasion to learn and see how experienced shinobi fight, as there will be fighting all kinds of shinobi. From Genin to Jonin, some of them are borderline Kage. I'm mostly curious to see how well will fare Shunshin no Shursui against Naruto, as both of them are speed demons. Sakura only nodded and hurried to her home to read some things that she was given to, but also to relax and later meet with Ino and exchange new gossips and rumors. Whole younger generation of Uchiha clan was gathered on one of biggest training field inside of district. They were there to be sworn as full members of clan, with all rights and privileges of being one, but also to pass initiation rites of becoming true Uchiha, that is to show that they could perform two jutsu. Hozenka and Gokakyu no Jutsu, which were trademark just of clan and one that were their greatest pride. Thee have brought here thou children to become true members of Uchiha clan, said Kagami, as Fugaku couldn't because he had Naruto and Sasuke there. They missed previous solstices due to their training with Itachi. Did thee teach them the ways of our clan? We did, replied parents/guardians. Did thee explain to them importance of the ceremony? Asked Kagami, glancing over the faces of those teens and children standing in front of him and priests that were few steps behind him with ash made from wood that was collected from tree that was created by Senju Hashirama as a gift to Uchiha clan during creation of the village. We did, was once again heard, and this time gaze of Kagami landed on children and teens in front of him. Do thee know the importance of the ceremony? He asked them, noticing excitation and trepidation visible on their faces. After all, it was the most expected ceremony by everybody inside of clan. We know, they chorused, and now was the tricky part of the oaths sworn, as some members of council didn't approve them. Do thee pledge their loyalties to Uchiha clan and head of it? Asked Kagami. We do, they replied. Do thee pledge thou lives to Uchiha clan? He asked and glanced at their faces. It was obvious they were excited, but they were also determined to swear all of those oaths. We do, was their reply. Do thee swear to obey the laws and customs of our clan? We do. Then by the power granted to me by our ancestors and forefathers, said Kagami, declare all of you full members of Uchiha no Ikizoku. So have thee sworn, and thou parents were witnesses to it. So mote be it. When he said those words, priests moved forward and gave those members necklaces that were the symbols of clan unity. They weren't anything unusual. They were only small clan crest made out of chakra steel, covered in red and white emeline and placed on silver chain. After that, their faces were covered in markings made out of ash. They had ash placed around eyes, on forehead, cheeks, and over their nose. When that part of ceremony was done, they moved to tables set up in loose circle nearby on one of the training fields. It was time for usual feast followed by those initiation rites. As they were eating, last rays of sun hid behind the horizon, and it was the time for those ceremony, as it was the best time to admire displays of Katon Jutsu. After all, they were the easiest to watch when it was dark. They weren't the most powerful then, but the power of them was a secondary thing during those rituals, as an ability to create those fires was more important. Kagami and 2 of Jonins that were part of 12 Dragons, that is the most elite and best shinobi of Uchiha clan, and fought alongside clan head and his family. During audiences in capital, they were his honor guard. They wore armor similar to one wore in the past by Uchiha Madara or Senju Hashirama. They walked to the middle of empty part of the ground, waiting for ones that wanted to test their luck. It was a signal for those that wanted to try their luck with passing those rites to rise from the table and join them on the swathe of ground in the middle of circle of tables. They aligned themselves in front of those battle-scarred shinobi that saw more wars and battles than most of them probably lived. They were usually used as a unit to patch holes in the front, along with guards of other clan heads and under command of one of clan heads. You stood here as stood here your fathers before you and their fathers before them stood here. You want to claim the full rights of Uchiha clan member, along with right to wear our crest covered in flames. To claim those rights, you need to show 2 jutsu that are pride and reason why we are so feared. Gokaku no jutsu and Hosenka no jutsu, said Kagami, looking over the line. He was going to start from the right side of it and move to the left. And at the far right side of it stood only Uchiha that was easily to recognize, as his hairs were almost yellow. Uchiha Naruto stepped forward. Those words cut through all of the usual chatter and small talks between people. Naruto stepped forward onto cleared patch of ground and calmed himself down. He slowly went through every single hand seal required to perform it. When he was done with them, he shouted Kaozenka no jutsu, placed fingers in front of his mouth to shape them, and exhaled 9 balls made out of flames. They were almost white in color, sign of good control over the flames and high amount of chakra pushed into them. Those balls of fire soared high into the air where they disappeared in showers of sparks. When he performed that jutsu, people nodded approvingly, and most of them loudly voiced their opinions that he should be already made full clan member, even without showing second jutsu. When cheers calmed down and people were once again quiet, Naruto started weaving through hand seals. When he was done with them, he shouted, Gokaku no jutsu. He placed his hand in front of his mouth and exhaled stream of fire that formed large fireball, over 30 feet in diameter. By the power given to me by the council, I announce Uchiha Naruto to pass the rites, making him a full member of Uchiha clan, said Kagami as Naruto walked to him. Naruto received ceremonial dagger of family and black shirt that was his size with crest covered in flames. Naruto returned to his place at the table, which was to the right of Itachi, almost in the middle of it. They spent the rest of evening celebrating, and when it was midnight they retreated to get some sleep, as in the morning they would pray in Naka Shrine in front of eternal flame that was burning there since foundation of Konoha. And after that they would have time to prepare for the fights, and Naruto had an idea of what armor he was going to be wearing, and few people agreed with him that it would be a good idea. In the morning they walked to Naka Shrine to pray for good future of the clan, and at the same time thanking for the events of last year. It was the celebration that was around renewal of life, but also in times of war it was ceremony when they were praying for luck and winning the war. Once they returned to their homes, everybody that was going to fight in that tournament left to prepare for it. Naruto found in his room new thing, armor stand on which was placed crimson red plate armor, along with mesh armor that he should also wear. It wasn't normal mesh armor, as in this could be placed armor plates to strengthen it. He slowly dressed into it, admiring every piece of armor, and it took him something like 30 minutes to dress into it. When he was dressed into it, he looked truly terrifying, and that was without even using killing intent to force opponent into submission. He placed on his back his set of swords and attached all other necessary holsters and pouches for tools. He didn't tie his hair, he let them freely fall down his back. Once he walked out of his room, Sasuke, Minato, and Izuna looked at him in weird mix of fear and respect, as they didn't expect him to wear that thing during the tournament. When he passed through the mansion, Itachi only nodded approvingly. He was wearing similar one, but his was black with red additions. Sasuke only settled for simpler, heavily modified ANBU tactical armor, which was lighter and allowed greater freedom of movements as there weren't so many metal plates. Fugaku was only wearing kimono with crest of clan visible on it. It was surrounded in flames, and under it were crossed 2 swords, sign of who he was. That is head of Uchiha clan. Haruno Sakura woke up early in the morning, quickly dressed and ate her breakfast, awaiting with anticipation events that would happen later today. When she talked with Ino, she learned that those tournaments were of rather great importance for clans and that being invited there was a huge honor. Few minutes before 8 bell rung, and she walked down the stairs to see that Kakashi invited himself inside. "Good that you are ready," said Kakashi as he looked at her and nodded approvingly. "Where are you taking her?" asked Mabuki. "Traditional Uchiha tournament. As she is a member of a team on which are Uchiha, she is automatically invited," said Kakashi, who looked as calmly as ever, "but it will be also a perfect time for her to learn more about different styles of fighting. If you need to, you can take her," huffed Mabuki, looking with disgust at them and muttering things about Uchiha, which weren't that popular in certain circles due to their ties with the court and power they had. Many looked at them with envy as they also wanted to have that power. Whole family walked up the stairs and into the clan headbox where already were few people sitting there. They were Sarutobi Asuma and his genin team, Hyuga Hayashi and his family, clan elders and their families. There were only 9 free spots. They walked to the front of seats and took their seats there, while politely greeting and exchanging pleasantries with other clan heads and elders. Last to arrive were Sakura and Kakashi. They walked into the box and looked around. Sakura's eyes widened when she saw Naruto in that armor sitting in front row. "Chibi Madara," muttered Kakashi when he saw that armor and hairstyle. He walked down the stairs and took one of last remaining seats, while Sakura sat beside him. "Why are they having their faces painted in ash?" she quietly asked, noticing ash covering faces of Naruto and Sasuke. "Element of certain rituals," quietly explained Kakashi. "I can't tell you more." When everybody was seated, Fugaku reached into black bowl placed in front of his seat. He fished out of it 2 pieces of paper. Those would be ones lucky to start the tournament. When he did that, he raised from his seat, getting attention of everybody. "First fight will be held between Uchiha Hiruzen and Uchiha Naruto," he loudly announced and sat back. At the same time, Proctor entered the arena. When he marched to the middle of arena, to his sides appeared 2 shinobi. One was Naruto and second was Hiruzen, who was a year older than Naruto and was quite tall. He was over 5 feet and 4 inches. He was wearing black ninja pants and dark blue t-shirt with clan crest. He had short dark brown hairs that were a little spiky. When people saw armor wore by Naruto, level of noise picked up as he reminded them of Madara, and many people actually saw Madara in their youth. "You fight until one of you is knocked out of chakra or forfeits," said Kenji, who was one of 12 dragons and one of the most experienced shinobi out of the whole clan. He also got questionable privilege of being a proctor. "You can use whatever you want or wish to, but if I say it's over, it is over, is that clear?" "Hi," both of them said at the same time and leaped to the opposite sides of the arena. They didn't want to make this battle-scarred shinobi angry at them. "This will be an interesting fight," said Itachi. "Hiruzen is good with genjutsu and tactics, but Naruto has plenty of chakra and can simply outrun him. He has so much chakra that he can pretty much outrun everybody short of powerful Kage. He might use interesting tactic here. I rarely have an opportunity to see Sharingan genjutsu at work," said Kakashi. "It might be interesting. I'm more interested about taijutsu. You hinted he knows that style." "Against him?" asked Itachi, and Kakashi nodded. "Nope, against Shursui or me most probably, as he learned most of advanced katas of our main style and can use them to deadly effect." Naruto and Hiruzen stood on the opposite sides of the arena and were watching themselves, their Sharingan slowly spinning and looking for any openings. Naruto ran forward, taking out one of his swords as he did so, when Hiruzen noticed that, and he responded with his own charge and took out Tanto that he had strapped onto his back. They clashed in the middle of the field and were trying to see who was stronger and had an advantage in the fight. Hiruzen had an advantage of shorter and more maneuverable blade, while Naruto had a lot heavier and stronger blade, one that he could use to break most of defense. Naruto withdrawn his blade for a moment and jumped away, causing Hiruzen to stumble forward. When he did that, Naruto did upward arc with his sword and it almost cleaved through the face of Hiruzen, forcing him to dodge it and jump away. They looked at each other, looking for the beginning of round 2 of fighting. "I wonder why he doesn't use his sabers," said Kakashi. "They will be better against Soul Blade as he will have 2 blades instead of 1. "Did you forget what was the color with which they lit when chakra was channeled through them?" asked Itachi with raised eyebrow. "Yellow," slowly said Kakashi, remembering Sensei using those blades during third wall or training with his team. What is so important about color of those blades? Asked Sakura, unaware about what she was asking about, and a couple of people lightly laughed when they heard those words. Because those are sabers of Kiroi Senko, explained Uchiha Kagami, and well, blue eyes, yellow hairs, those sabers and those swords. I can't believe how blind can be certain people. Of course, said Sarutobi Asuma, getting weird looks from his genin. I don't believe how blind I could be and not see this obvious truth. He is their son, isn't he? He is, nodded Hayashi. After all, it was revealed on the council few years ago. Their son? Asked Ino, who do you mean? You will see, was the only reply of her sensei. I wonder if Shikamaru knows the answer. I know, said Shikamaru looking at his sensei. I know for something like 4 years. It took me some time to put together all of those pieces, but after that it was rather obvious. Why didn't you tell us? Asked Ino, glaring at Shikamaru. Because Tusan forced me to swear not to reveal that data. Shrugged off Shikamaru and looked at the arena below him. After all, it is S-rank secret if I remember correctly. Yet if someone can spend several days looking through books, he can find the truth easily. Naruto looked at Hiruzen, considering his options. He wanted to finish this quickly and wasn't in the mood for hours-long game. He considered his options and what he could do, until something hit him. He opened his right palm and started forming chakra above it into a small ball. When he was doing that, many people looked at him in disbelief and shock as they recognized that jutsu, as it was too well known not to be recognized. Naruto ran forward towards Hiruzen, hand with Rasengan in it extended. He charged straight ahead, aiming to hit him in the chest, in such way it wasn't deadly, just enough to knock him out. Hiruzen saw what Naruto was trying to do, but he couldn't dodge too much as Naruto was able to correct his path of attack on the fly thanks to Sharingan. So Hiruzen didn't change place where it was going to hit. Rasengan! Yelled Naruto, slamming it into the chest of Hiruzen, whose eyes opened in shock and pain as he was thrown backwards and into the wall behind him, with deep, gaping and bloody wound in his chest. It wasn't life-threatening, but it was dangerous and painful. Winner Uchiha Naruto, announced Kenji as he walked forward to check on Hiruzen, who was knocked out. When he announced, there were heard loud cheers, as it was rather good fight and it seemed rather even till the end. Indeed, he is their son, said Kakashi. After all, his father created this jutsu. Maybe we shall disperse with all of this secrecy? Suggested Fugaku. I think that everybody here knows who he is, or at least suspects, so there is no point in hiding it. I think so, said Hayashi. Then Kakashi, maybe you should do the honors, as they treated you almost as their son, suggested Fugaku. With pleasure, said Kakashi. Naruto here is son of Namikaze Minato, Yandame Hokage and Konoha no Kiroi Senko, and of Uzumaki Kushina, Akai Chishio no Habanero and princess of Yuzushiogakure. What? Only said Sakura, not believing what she was hearing. How that blonde baka can be son of Yandame Hokage. Nobody excluding me can call him baka, said Itachi, looking at Sakura. Of course, Itachi-sama, said Sakura, and Itachi lightly nodded. Best piece of evidence is his Kekkei Genkai. One that almost killed me on few occasions, said Itachi with thin smile, one that was passed only inside of Uzumaki royal line. Kongo Fusa, said Kakashi. Adamantine sealing chains. Rather nasty little things. I saw them in action way too many times, not to mention that they usually leave nasty scars. Yes, agreed Itachi, wincing a little as he still remembered them passing through his arm and leaving nice and even hole there as they passed through it. When he unlocked them, he almost skewered me with them and later pinned to the wall. And now he is even more scary. I'm scary? Asked Naruto when he appeared back in his seat. He bit his thumb, let some blood flow out of it and smeared it across the tattoo on his forearm. When he did that, he pressed his palm onto the floor. When he did that, there was a large plume of smoke, and once it was gone, there was large white tiger. Hello, Seishin, said Naruto as he scratched head of that tiger, which purred approvingly. You don't call me often, said Seishin when he looked at Naruto, his violet eyes focusing on him, while he looked around, noticing who was where and watching reaction of people. Your personal summon? Asked Kakashi when he saw that tiger that was laying in front of Naruto and nobody reacted strangely to him being there. while even some mainly Izuna and Minato looked happy as if they liked that tiger. Yes, agreed Naruto, and I need to claim second Uzumaki contract and Toad one. He looks cute, said Sakura. He is dangerous, said Naruto, showing his fangs that were the effects of bond with tigers, and cute, but more dangerous than cute. How can you have those fangs? Asked Sakura. Bond with tigers. When any summoning clan gives you their tattoo, they also subtly change your body. Eyes, ears, nose or teeth, explained Naruto and focused back on fights below. 15 minutes later was a fight that many expected and wanted to see, as it was going to be one of the most even fights. Uchiha Shisui versus Uchiha Itachi, announced Fugaku. When he said those words, there were heard loud talks all around the stadium as people talked excitedly about the fight.